Okay. Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'll get to the introduction here in a moment. I want to start with this. I want to cover the second Trump, golf cart, golf club, golf course gate, Golfgate, whatever it's being called by us. I don't know, which looks like another fake staged event, and Donald Trump's reaction, and then all these other things to do with it. And then, other stuff I'll be covering. Today is Tuesday, the 17th of September. Um, but I want to talk about victim consciousness and hatred in the beginning here, and then get into all the other stuff. So he says, Routh believed the shooter. Routh believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris and acted on it. The rhetoric is causing me to be shot at when I am the one who is going to save the country, and they're the ones who are destroying the country. And that's just fundamentally dishonest, and, it's a break from reality. Unfortunately, Trump's dopey supporters believe this stuff. And then, this happened at the debate.
She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
Okay. And then there was this. This is from True Social. It's hard to find his True Social post. I don't have a count there, which I don't want one. The rhetoric lies are as exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris. Again, she's not a communist, right? And so calling her Comrade Kamala Harris and saying that this is the vote that would save America, that this is the most important day in American history, and vote on November 5th, right? Like him saying all that stuff, that's the same kind of thing he's whining about. So let me expand on that. I'm editing here. So there's been long-standing narratives from the Republican Party about the Democrats being socialist, right? The Democrats are more liberal and have more leanings towards big government and things to do with, not communist, but socialism. Bernie Sanders was a socialist, right? But Bernie Sanders, they kept him from being the Democratic nominee because a socialist in it would never win. And those policies would never win and they would never pass. It's like very hard to be extremist on either side. Like Trump is supposed to be extreme, he appeals to the extreme conservatives. But there's this narrative about the Democrats being communists, and that's a label that they'll always throw out there. It's a hateful label, and it represents so much to these people who are scared, that people who are Republicans are scared that the country's going to turn into a communist country. And clearly, Kamala Harris is not a communist. She doesn't have communist policies. She is kind of liberal. I mean, she's a real liberal, but she doesn't care much about her liberalism. She'll throw her beliefs away for success, right? That's why she'll say things to pander to a crowd here or pander to a crowd there, but she doesn't really believe in anything. She's not a person of substance, so she doesn't have the depth of. I mean, she's a happy person, and unhappy people are communists. Communists are never happy, right? Like people who want communism, they all want like fair, and they want to, count everything, equally. They want to have equal distribution of things, and they want to have every. It's real bean counter, very overbearing and just life sucking type of a way of life, right? And him saying that feeds into the fears of the Republicans, which is fundamentally dishonest. It's the same thing he's accusing the Democrats of doing, right? If he had just been, honest about what Kamala Harris is and not throw an insult her way and called her comrade, then, he would be able to say, at least in that statement, he wasn't doing the same thing he's accusing them of. But he's doing that. He's creating fear and panic that if Kamala Harris wins, we're going to be a communist country. And he's already said over and over again that they are destroying the country and they will destroy the country in the next 4 years, which isn't the case. Biden didn't destroy the country. There are things that he's done that have, made the country worse, but most of the stuff is just happening because it's happening. Because the president has very little control over anything. And the people that run the system realize that the system they can't deliver on their promises to you. And so they're, taking another direction. Like the people who run the system don't want to destroy the system. It's that they can't, fudge the numbers anymore. They have no choice, right? And so this is Donald Trump being, you know, completely hypocritical here, calling her Comrade Harris when she's clearly not a communist. She's a horrible person, but she's not a communist, right? By Comrade Harris during the rigged and highly partisan ABC debate and all of its ridiculous lawsuits specifically designed to inflict damage on Joe's then Kamala's political opponent, me, has taken politics in our country to a whole new level of hatred, abuse, and distrust because of the communist left rhetoric. The bullets are flying, and it will only get worse. So this is unbelievably he lacks any kind of ability to self-perceive, which we've seen over and over again. It's a common problem with narcissists, and Trump is as narcissistic as it comes. It's hard to separate what's acting, what's scripting. Trump lies all the time. He pushes things out there, right? And what is, what he generally feels. But we know when Trump is triggered. He's triggered about crowd sizes. He's triggered by the idea that they would love him as he have as much enthusiasm as he would have. He's triggered by all the legal stuff that's happened, and he feels like a true victim. He expresses victim consciousness from a true place, as do his dopey supporters, right? And so let me start off with this. I really dislike Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't want to say dislike. I can't listen to her, which many of you guys can't, right? And it isn't because of what she's saying. It isn't because of what she believes. It has nothing to do with anything she's done to me personally. I mean, I felt like this in 2019 and 2020 when they were doing the Democratic debates. And there was 20 unlikable people running for president. I mean, there was not one person that I thought was interesting. Andrew Wang was good to listen to because he said crazy stuff, and I guess I didn't like Marianne Williamson and the way she talks. I mean, it's off-putting. And, these other people that were a little bit different, maybe Tulsi, Gabbard. But all these people I don't find worth my time. I would never listen to them, right? Tulsi Gabbard occasionally says truther stuff, but I can't listen to her. I really can't listen to any of these people, and I don't find them interesting at all. Like, I could watch, reality TV shows, and I can listen to interviews and, whatever it might be. Kennedy was interesting. Kennedy is somebody who has an interesting life and has interesting stories, and I liked his interviews in the beginning because he said things that were, he was not talking to dumb people. Like, he had stuff that was for smart people. Like, he said things that, I learned some things from him in terms of, environmental stuff and other things. And he, was a much better speaker, and he didn't dumb down his message. But the majority of these politicians, I could never listen to unless I'm, mocking them here and talking about how bad they suck. Like, I couldn't do it. But Kamala Harris stands out, right? The only person I can compare her to is Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton is, like, tough and hard and unhappy and depressing, and she sucks at public speaking. She's very dour. She's an unhappy person. And she's, up until this point, was the hardest politician for me to listen to. The other ones have some idiosyncratic thing that I find funny or, something. But there's something about her as a person. And she's hated, right? Like, the Democrats hate her worse than Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton has put out policies, and he defamed the White House, and he did things that, for the Republicans were horrible things. And they still hate Hillary Clinton worse, right? Like, Hillary Clinton's done pretty much next to nothing to them, if they really thought about it. But they hate her. And I want to talk about this kind of hate that's generated in a moment. But Kamala Harris is nothing like Hillary Clinton. But she's on that level where it's just really hard to listen to. Kamala Harris is pretty much happy all the time. She's one of the happier politicians. I mean, her laugh comes from a sincere place. It's not a fake laugh. She's smiling and happy, and she's really psyched to be running for president. I mean, she's like living her best life, really happy person. She hasn't done anything in her policies I mean, she hasn't really done anything. And so there's nothing that she's done to personally hurt me. And she's not a victim either. One of the things that really drains me is all the victim consciousness. I'm tired of hearing it. I'm turned to doing this job. And she's not really a victim, even though she's a person of color. She's not, somebody who's whining about being, held back or held, down. I mean, she has, various ways that people would and could have been prejudiced against her. And she tries to be one of those people. She tries to pretend she's, one of the people that's been disenfranchised, like once in a while, like just, for political reasons. But she doesn't believe that, right? She doesn't. I mean, she has this thing that her mom says, stop whining. What are you going to do about it? And I think that's an actual thing that her mom said. And, she's figured out a way. And, I don't even have a problem with her prostituting herself to the guy, whatever his name is, the Willie Brown or whatever, to get ahead in life because, that's what people do. Like in terms of these people, like they're, politicians and people who have a lot of ambition. Like success is important to them, and it was, to her. And she's fake, and she's nothing. She has nothing inside her, but she has nothing that she does that's really off-putting to me. Like in terms of who she is as a person, she's happy. She's not a victim, and there's nothing there. She certainly hasn't done anything to me personally, but I just can't listen to her. Like I just can't. And it isn't. It's quite almost the opposite of Hillary Clinton, who's dour and depressing and, is cynical. And, Kamala Harris is actually she's always like giggling, right? And, and I don't find the laugh and the giggling like the worst part of it. It's just all of it. Like when she starts to talk, I want to turn the TV off. And so do some of the other people. It's her energy. It's who she is as a person. Again, there's no hatred from me to her, but she's really hard to listen to, right? Much harder than Donald Trump. I was a person who liked The Apprentice, and I knew Donald Trump was an asshole, for years and years ago. But he was funny. He was funny on that show. I mean, I never thought Donald Trump was a good person or would make a good president or anything like that. But, and I liked listening to him, even though I didn't agree with much of what he said in his speeches because the way that he went after, he was just not acting like a politician. And he certainly wasn't acting like a president. And so I found Donald Trump very entertaining, right? Like in terms of the way he provoked, because to me the presidency is a joke. The political system is a joke, right? It's not what they pretend to be. They get in there. It's like when the Brits wear those white wigs, the judges and these people in their courts and all that stuff, and they put on those stupid white wigs. Like, why are you doing that now? It's freaking 2024. You're still doing that shit, right? It's weird. Like, why are you doing that? Like, it's just so performative. And all these, when I listen to these hearings and all the, the culture there, all the lingo, all this stuff, then they try to make it high and, highfalutin kind of, like it's really important and it's really this, and anybody that goes in and degrades a thing, even someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because it is just low-life stuff. These low-life politicians are doing low-life, it's just criminal and it's like incestuous and their whole, like it's just a snake eating its tail. It's just like this, this fake stuff that they do. They pretend that it's like official and these people have standards and ethics and they have rules and regulations and they have a point of order, and just like with lawyers, right? It's all lawyer speak and it's hard to listen to for bad people who are doing bad things, right? And so someone to come in like Trump and just show everybody that it's a joke and still like not destroy the country by not going along with the way that we were supposed to behave. He wasn't behaving presidential. So up until the COVID thing, he was my favorite president as a character in the show. And I enjoy listening to him because I knew he was provoking the other side by not acting presidential. And that was their one complaint about him, is he wouldn't play the game. He wouldn't act presidential. He wouldn't play the role, a fake role. And I like that about Trump, right? Even though I knew that he was provoking those people purposefully and making them feel hatred towards him, right? And, which was dividing the country. And because the country's already fucked and, it's all that stuff. So I don't care. None of these people have done anything personally to me. Like none of their policies. I don't feel the effect of any of their policies, and they're only bringing truth to the light of the reality that our country is completely fucked, and it's going in the wrong way. Going in the wrong way. It's demonic. It goes against the will of God. It goes against the natural order, the debt-based system, and all of it. The religion, all of this. Our system is demonic. It's based in lies, and it's a deceptive system, and it's abusive. It's hurt all of us. The system itself, and these people are the faces of that system, and so therefore they are hated on, right? But I'm saying that because I don't care about it. Like I don't feel any hatred towards any of these people. I don't feel anything. Now Trump has become really hard to listen to lately, the past 2 years. I mean, post his election thing, because he just whines about being abused. He whines about being prejudiced against. He whines. He's a victim. Like Trump has embraced victim consciousness, and he didn't have it before. Like in 2020, when he was running for president, he had it a little bit about how he was being mistreated, but it was after the election where Trump felt like he was being mistreated in some kind of way that no one in the history of America had ever been mistreated, and nobody would ever treat a president like this. And he was part of a club, and that he could have put Hillary Clinton in jail, but he didn't because he knew that would divide the country. He said, but it's just because it didn't suit him anymore. Like he lies about everything about those things. But he didn't put her in jail because, he said it was because that it would just be bad, at make a bad look to the former first lady and somebody running for president to be put in jail. So he didn't do it. He could have, but didn't do it. Chose not to, which is, he put other people in jail, like normal people who did far less damage than Hillary Clinton and broke far less laws. But no, he said he could have and didn't, right? I showed you that clip. He said it a couple times. But then he said, we're all part of a club, basically, and they targeted me a way that no former president ever has been targeted. And that's another reason why he's a victim, because, they all had documents. Biden had documents, Clinton had documents, but he was the only one who was charged, right? And he made it sound like it was some, like he was the hero and they were trying to persecute the hero and stop him from saving the country. The very thing that he's saying now. And to some extent, he believes that shit. And of course, it isn't true, right? And the other part of this phenomena is the cult of Trump, because his followers don't have the ability to just see the reality that Trump is divisive, that why they hate Donald Trump. Admit that the people who hate Donald Trump, they have the same reasons for hating him as you have for hating Biden or hating Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, it's interesting about the hatred. So there is like lots of Republicans who are pro big pharma. There's lots of, all the Republican platform is more pro big pharma than anybody else. And Trump rushed out Operation Warp Speed, and many Republicans got the boop right off the bat, right? And all of this stuff that happened with the whole COVID thing. But somehow Fauci, who no one knew who he was, like before COVID, nobody knew who he was. But somehow all the Republicans knew that they were supposed to hate him, and all the Democrats were supposed to love him. It just became this thing where people were like, they knew which side they were supposed to be on. I mean, someone new will show up, like Walz, and he's a Democrat, and nobody knew who Tim Walz was. Nobody really knew who J.D. Vance was. But people on both sides find a way to hate those people, right? They don't give them any kind of a chance. And people on the other side that are, the people who are on the side of the candidate, they'll just love him. Oh, look at how great he is. Look at how great, the family is, right? All the Democrats find a way, they're so prejudiced in their beliefs. They're just told, Tim Walz could easily be a Republican. Like, what if he had been Trump's running mate? And the Republicans would feel the exact opposite. Let's say he gave the exact same speech, except as a Republican as he did at the DNC, he gave it at the RNC. Let's say Tim Walz had somehow been a Republican and Trump tagged him to be vice president, and he gave that speech. The Republicans who hate him and make fun of him would love him, and it would be the exact same family, the exact same speech, the exact same everything, right? What if his wife got up and said that, goofy thing that she did, which I'll show, again, I want to show the recent memes, right? But what if his wife got up and did that shit that she just did and said, turn the page on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and the Republicans who are now laughing at her would be cheering her, right? It's because people have been told you're on this side, and anybody who's on the other side you hate, and anybody who is on your side as part of your team you love. And it's just so bizarre to me. Like I've never really fully been able to be a part of that. Like you're not even fully, even partially. It's hard for me. Like I just don't have it in me, right? Like even when I voted, I didn't feel that way. Like this, I could see that all the politicians were sucky, and this was just kind of a scam, and there was no good guys or bad guys or whatever it was, like they say. I mean, it's just they make it like a binary system. They're all too they're all part of the same thing. But the Trump people are particularly cult-like. And some person asked me a question: what was wrong with Trump saying that they eat dogs? Pets go missing. We had a Farley who had cataracts. She was an older dog, and she walked down the driveway and got hit by a car. And then we had our cat Wampus when we were traveling, and she disappeared, and we think it was coyotes. Coyotes and predators are a big part of why pets often die. Like when cats die, it's more often another cat, or I mean that's probably less frequent, but it's usually going to be some sort of predator, and more than likely a coyote. Coyotes kill a lot of pets, right? Coyotes will, the coyote in heat will attract a dog, away from its home, and then the coyotes will attack it and eat it, right? Like there's coyotes are pretty devious. They're known as the trickster in the Native American culture, and they live in the fringes of your property, and they eat your pets occasionally, right? And so, sometimes cats get hit by cars or whatever it is, right? So how would it feel to you if your neighbor's cat disappeared, and your neighbor wrote all over social media and told everybody in the town you live in that you took their cat and killed it and ate it with no proof, right? That you not only that, but you eat cats and dogs, and that you're going around and you're grabbing dogs and cats in your neighborhood because you're pet eaters and you eat people's pets, and that everyone in the town now was suspicious of you and believed that you were pet eaters. Well, that's what Donald Trump essentially did on a much bigger stage, demonizing a large group of people. And, I mean, it's a horrible thing to do. And he had no proof, and it was just a rumor. And it was convenient for him. The reason he said it was it fit into a narrative, and he was willing to throw the whole Haitian people under the bus because of it. But the real problem is, why are there groups of people being put in small towns across America? I know about this happening to one other place, and I'm sure it's happening all over the place. Like nobody knew in Springfield, Ohio, that 1/4 of the population is Haitian immigrants, and I don't know how many of them came into the country legally. But not only that, they're being funded by your tax dollars. These immigrants are coming in, and I don't blame any of these immigrants. They want a better life. They're living in hell, many of these people, especially people in Haiti right now. But these people coming from these various countries where there's poverty and the criminal gang, like not just criminal gangs, not like just drug cartels, right? There's actually criminals running the government in ways that are, there's just no rule of law at all, and these people are just abused, right? There's people who are living horrible lives who are being ethnically cleansed in their country, the prejudice and the poverty, and they hear about America. And America has always wanted immigrants to come in. There's a whole thing there in New York where, give me your tired masses. Bringing immigrants in who are cheap labor. America has always wanted an immigrant population to do the jobs that other people wouldn't do. And, the people who used to come in, my ancestors, my, Italian and Irish, they were immigrants at some time who were looked at as dirty people and things like that, came in, and, all these people that have been, every group that comes in, and then they do the labor that no one else will do. And then they establish, themselves in America, and they become educated. My grandfather came my father's father, my paternal grandfather, the Romano part of my family, came from Sicily, a place where there's a lot of, used to be a penal colony there. There's a lot of criminals. My grandfather was a barber, though. He cut hair. He owned a barber shop and had a house in the suburbs in New Jersey. And his son went to college. He had a couple daughters, three daughters. My dad had three sisters. But because he was the boy, he got to go to college. They didn't, these things. But, they all lived better lives. My dad's sisters became a nurse, and they had these other jobs. One of them married a cop and became a housewife, right? These things. But they all had better lives than my grandfather, who came from an impoverished place in Sicily, and then my my dad's kids, me and my siblings, we are all educated, all college people, and better off than it's just like how it goes in terms of generational, these things. My mom's mom came from Ireland. I don't know who came. My grandfather was German. I don't know when his family migrated here. But we've all my siblings are, living better lives than my grandparents, right? The immigrant grandparents, right? My paternal grandmother is Albanian, which is Albania is a country that's just war torn and, just not, it's not a good place to live. There's just a lot of poverty and just the politics there. They have a very weak government. It's just, what I've known about it. Like, it's the least, I know less about Albania than all the other countries. But either way, they all came from worse situations and materially, and now years later, and maybe there's some prejudice against my grandfather and these other people, because of their ethnicity, and that is lesser now, right? People who grew up Italian, it's not such a big deal. Where they used to be considered the dirties, right? The Irish and the Italians did it at one point, but immigrants are looked down on. People don't like them, but they are brought to America for a specific purpose, and that is to do the work that other people won't do. Eventually, that'll be robots, right? And there'll be prejudice against robots because they come in and they take jobs that really the majority of Americans wouldn't do anyway, right? But there's a reason they're bringing in immigrants, and there's a reason they're dumping them into towns like they're doing. And they're not, no one's talking about that. Like how effed up it is that 20,000 of these people are in this town of Springfield. And Donald Trump is missing the point because he wants to make this a political, issue with Kamala Harris and make it about them. But these Haitians were already coming into the America and into Springfield, Ohio when he was president in 2018, 2 years before, halfway through his presidency, these Haitians were being shipped to Springfield, Ohio, and being funded by the federal government. That's the other thing. They're taking your money. And again, like I don't have a problem with the immigrants, but why are you taking taxpayers' money to pay for these people to be in this country, right? Like you're bringing these people in, and there is a real population problem, despite what people believe. The world's overpopulated, and America is definitely in a state where there's going to be food shortages and things coming up, and a growing population of immigrants doesn't help that at all, right? And so they're not, what's happening with that. And so there's things that are really concerning here, but Trump isn't pointing those things out, and he was a part of the problem. So it's just lies and bullshit from him, right? But I'm saying all this because of the rhetoric that Trump has now that he is some sort of a victim. And being a victim is the worst thing at this point. Victim consciousness, everyone wants to be a victim. Israel, as the Israelis want to be the victim in Israel, but it's really the Palestinians who are the victims there, right? But the Palestinians don't have a voice. They don't have they have young American, people who are Palestinian and young Americans who are protesting for them and trying to be their voice. But they don't really have a voice, right? They don't have a lobbying group. They don't have at least here in America. And, they don't really have advocates anywhere else, right? They don't have an army or a government, and they're just being, ethnically cleansed from that country, right? There's a genocide happening there. But, Jewish people have long, had this thing about becoming victims because of the Holocaust and the lobbying groups they have, the Anti-Defamation League, and all these things that they have out there to make sure everyone remembers that they were victims and their people were victimizing them all the time. In fact, they, were upset when other groups were claiming to be victims, right? And Kamala Harris, to her credit, even though she comes from these ethnic groups, Indian people have been prejudiced against because people think about them as being like Muslims and being like the 9/11 terrorists or whatever they are, right? When after those events happened, Indian people were being targeted. And, of course, being Jamaican, these other things, being a person of color and being a woman, like you don't hear her whining like Hillary Clinton is about a glass ceiling. Like I don't think she's thinking about doing this thing for women. She's just really ambitious and these other things, right? And so, in terms of her policies, which she doesn't have any, in terms of her beliefs and her positions, which, they're very light. Like she doesn't care about her positions. She's like near does Trump. They're both very superficial people. And so she's more unlikable. I don't know why. Her energy, who she is, what she exudes, even though she's happy and not a victim. But Trump is turned into this whiny victim. And, he's done things and just who he is and just the way he attacks people. Like, the stuff with the dogs. He's irresponsible and he throws his friends under the bus. People have supported him. He's really a piece of shit, right? He's just an out and out piece of shit. And all this negative energy that was already there, like the political divide was already there. And Trump has made it worse. And it's made it more racial. He's made it more, based in sex and these other things. He's played into all this stuff. He's pandered to the worst element of the right. And he's provoked the worst element of the left. He's been the catalyst for them to roll out all kinds of bad policies and to push for division. And he's just been a cancer and the instigator of this whole thing. Like Trump's just been a cancer on the country in terms of the negativity and all of it. And for him to whine about how the other side's rhetoric against him is causing these, certainly the first event was fake, and I'm assuming the second one is too. And it helps Trump, right? These things help Trump. Every time Trump gets shot at, these events happen. It helps him. And why is he the one getting shot at when, like I said, the Republicans hate Kamala probably more than Joe Biden already. They hated Joe Biden, and they thought Joe Biden was destroying their country, and they're armed, and many of them are, mentally ill. I mean, even all the stuff that happened with the big event in January of 2021, the way that they were behaving there and all that stuff. And they're being provoked and infiltrated by the, the three-letter agencies, right? These radical militia-type groups. Why aren't they taking shots at Joe Biden and, Kamala Harris, right? Why is Trump only, why is the unarmed liberal Democrats going after Trump? It, makes no sense, right? But they want these things to happen. And there might be a point where they actually assassinate Trump when they're done with him. Like that could be done just to provoke people. They might, they'll throw that guy under the bus the way he throws people under the bus. Like it's just, that might happen later on. But if they wanted to do that now, they could at any point, right? But Trump claiming it's the rhetoric when, he's just a hateful person who says irresponsible things. He doesn't have responsibility to his audience. To his cult followers, he provoked them into doing bad things. He's pushing their rhetoric and things like this. And he's pushing them towards violence. And if Trump was really assassinated, it would destroy the country. It would divide the country. But I, want people to think about why they hate people, right? Why do you hate Kamala? Why do you hate Hillary Clinton? Why do you hate Joe Biden? Why do you hate Fauci, right? If you're a Republican, why do you hate these people? The other side is justified in hating Trump and J.D. Vance and then the other Republicans, George W. Bush, these other people, Reagan. Like the hatred they have and the hatred you have is illusionary. Like what exactly have these people done to you personally? Like what have they done? And also the other part of this is people so identify with somebody like Trump, like now Kamala, like people who hated Kamala didn't want to vote for her when she was running in the primary, so she had to withdraw. Now every time Kamala gets criticized, especially women are taking it personally, like Democratic women, right? Like that's just batshit crazy. Like when Trump gets criticized, you take it personally. When I say Trump's a piece of shit and you get all butthurt, Like I'm not talking about you. And Trump is a piece of shit, right? For the stuff he does, the way he treats you as an audience, the way he's provoked people, the way he got worked on COVID, the way he throws people under the bus, and just the general, him waking up every day, he makes the world the worst place by the energy exudes and the way he just brings humanity down to a lower level, just like all these people do. They're all bottom feeders, but Trump is particularly powerful one. His ability to bring America down, America provoke hatred on both sides. Trump in some ways is the human epitome of the human version of hate. If hate was a person, it's like Trump. Like he just goes out there and he exudes hate, and he's always been the way he went after like Rosie O'Donnell. Like, come on, like Rosie O'Donnell sucks, but like for him to put all that hate on her and all that stuff that he did. I mean, before he was even running for president, these feuds he got into, like he would bury people, like people in business. Sometimes it would be his vendors, and anybody who just who ruffled the king's feathers, he would destroy these people. Small business owners, he would destroy them. Like you can see it in him. He did it. Like he's just these stories are true because Trump would negotiate things and he'd screw people over, and he went bankrupt, and all the time, every time he went bankrupt, people who were counting on him paying his bills, and then all of a sudden like small businesses went under because Trump couldn't pay his bills. So people suffered, like people, hardworking people, right? Trump doesn't give a fuck because he's a selfish piece of shit, right? And so me saying that is based in truth. And there's all these truthers that are Trumpers that won't even look at the fact that Ketchupgate is fake, and him saying this stuff is irresponsible. I mean, just they're just desperately hoping for someone to save a country that should have collapsed long ago. But if you don't see why people hate Trump, and you don't see why you hate, the sort of the cult of hate that exists right now, like why are Americans so hateful when you have such good lives? Like your lives are so much better than people in other countries. You have no idea. I mean, that's why people are coming here and doing shit jobs, doing the work that nobody wants to do. Like immigrants come here and do work for far less money, and far less, benefits, and they have a much better attitude than any American doing, Americans hate their good jobs, right? Americans complain about their good jobs, and you see the way people are living in other countries, right? Like America's entitled, whining little, whining little bitches, and have no idea how good we have it on a material level. So why is that? Like, why are Americans so full of hate, right? Because your lifestyle, which has been so much better than people's lifestyles all around the world. Even our homeless people are better off here in terms of our lifestyle. We have more resources and more, just more money, more, more stuff than everybody. And even with all that, we're complaining all the time and filled with hate. Like, where's the hate coming from? Like, why are Americans hateful about anything compared to, when people are suffering real? I mean, people suffer because of their politicians. I mean, they're, tortured and killed and things, right? When I was in Sri Lanka, there was a kid who did the meditation. He was a preceptor. He was 18, young to be a preceptor. And his father was taken. Like he was Tamil, like he was the same, the Tamil people that live in Chennai, and Sri Lanka is like where Cuba is to Florida. So Sri Lanka is like India's Florida, and they have all these Sinhalese people there, and they have these people called the Tamil Tigers. There's 10% of the people are Tamil. That's in Chennai. It's all Tamil. Like this is the Brahmin caste. Kamala's family comes from, is Tamilian. And they're usually educated, the people who are often politicians and teachers and professors and gurus and things like this. But in Sri Lanka, the Tamil people are prejudiced against, and they have a fake terrorist group called the Tamil Tigers that gets run by all kinds of different people, foreign groups and the Sinhalese government. And because of this group, the Sinhalese police were going into the Tamil homes and just taking people. And this kid who was 18 when he was 10 years old, 8 years before I met him, they went to his house and just took his dad. I saw the guy at the gathering. I had seen him in some years in 2020. But this is back in 2015. My family and I went to Sri Lanka to get our visas renewed. and we hung out with these people. But that's his life. This kid, one day the police came in, grab his dad, and take him, and he never sees his dad again. He doesn't even know his dad was alive or dead or whatever. Like, that's real shit, right? Like, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did anything like that to you. Like, you might pay some more taxes. I mean, but most times you really can't even tell the difference between in terms of how it affects your life, other than when you turn on the news or you turn on the internet and you hear people telling you how bad it is. Like, it's pretty much the same. Like, I don't know any difference. I mean, I don't know much differences in terms of when Trump was president in terms of when Biden was president, right? Like, I watch the news and things, but in terms of, the prices are higher, sure. But that has nothing to do with either one of those clowns. That has to do with the massive inflation, the bailout, and closing down the economy, which was done by the powers that be, right? And so, like, there's no reason to hate these people because they have no real power and influence, and they're just figureheads that are out there for you to hate. And people get sucked into the drama. And so for Trump to come out and say it's, that the reason that people hate him is because of the rhetoric of the Democrats when he's been this divisive, hateful piece of shit, and for his supporters to buy that and believe it, I mean, it's just pathetic, especially anybody who's in the truth community. Like, if you pretend to be a truther, you're not if you believe that. If you're putting out truther, whatever it is, videos, and you buy into this bullshit, it's like you're not being truthful with yourself, right? You're not figuring out, where your prejudice lies, where your inability to see the system through the divinity that's within you, right? From a completely neutral place. You can ask God to show you the truth and say, please, I want to know the truth, whatever it is. Like, just show me the truth, and I'll accept it. And get rid of my prejudice and my lens, my faulty lens that, distorts reality. Because it's our own personal distortion of reality that fucks us all over and fucks us personally, and it's what we should be really worried about. It's a distortion of reality that is the real enemy, and it's where all this stuff comes from. And you've allowed your reality to be distorted by these, moronic, self-hating people. What people call the elite, what I call the controllers, and the system itself. And these are the most insane people, the most, the most warped people, the people farthest away from the divinity within them and divinity itself. And the people that run the system are the worst, and they're, giving you this binary left-right paradigm for you to not ever figure out the truth, like the negative truth, and even more so the positive truth. They want to disconnect you from your divinity within you and get you focused on all the negative qualities of anger, hate, and fear that keep you from being, doing what you're supposed to do here, finding your soul's path and becoming what you're supposed to become. And that should be clear to everybody, but it's not. All right, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I got some videos from my TV, and then I have a bunch of more clips that just came in today. Some of the stuff is from yesterday over the weekend. And when they create a narrative, let me just show you this here first.
Yesterday with a friend, and where the suspect was camped out, according to Tom Winter. He apparently arrived here at around 2 a.m., stayed overnight, and then put up those two backpacks that you've seen in the pictures that authorities have released so far. These are the two pictures of the two backpacks, a GoPro camera on one side of them, and then that long weapon, the apparently looks like an AK style long semi-automatic weapon. But Andrea, all of this, what we're talking about today, happened only because a good Samaritan spotted that person running from somewhere outside Trump Golf Club, heading into that automobile, and had the presence of mind and the strength and the valor to take a picture of the car, take a picture of that car's tag, and then call that into authorities. That's how officials at Martin County Sheriff's Department were able to find and spot that car about 41 miles north of here.
Okay, so that sound in the background is my son putting away the dishes, clearing the dishwasher. We weren't in the same room. I could barely hear it. I thought the phone wouldn't pick it up, but it did. And so I could redo it, but I have this thing taped on my TV, but I don't think it's that much of a big deal. But anyways, it's the introduction of the Good Samaritan. Now this guy was a super witness. He tracked the guy. He followed an armed man. So was this guy a golfer? Was he walking down the street? And we'll get into this more as we go through this. What was this guy and why was he, what was he doing there? But he not only tracked a guy who was about to shoot the president. The guy was probably walking by with with his AK-47. He not only did that, but he also took a picture of the guy's car and license plate and called it in, and they promptly were able to catch this guy. And so I haven't been able to find the Good Samaritan. But I'm going to talk about how they disseminate this information. I talk about the intelligence community. And clearly this guy is, he's, he's a new character they've introduced, but he doesn't exist as a character yet. He hasn't been interviewed, hasn't been named, and, he hasn't been any of these things. But he's a new character. We'll come back to that later.
At one of the, just before one of the exits. But Andrea, had they not had that information, we'd have a whole different conversation going on. And by the way, we're just being told that Martin County Sheriff's Department says that the former president has invited the officers that took part in that takedown of that suspect on I-95 to Mar-a-Lago later today. The acting director of the Secret Service will be going to Mar-a-Lago, which is about 4 miles from where we are here.
Okay, so why not the Good Samaritan? So let's assume this thing's fake, or even if it isn't fake, this is how the news is. Once an event happens, it's either a controlled event that is a part of a psychological operation that's put out by the intelligence community, or it's an organic person and situation. And then the media and the intelligence community comes up with how they want this thing to be disseminated, right? So if it's an organic event, well, how are we going to cover it? How are we going to spin this? What are we going to get out of that? So when they release these narratives and they start creating a story here, the story is pitching for something. The story has things that it wants to accomplish, right? Political movements, social movements, bringing in new laws, bringing in new policies, whatever it might be. And so the Good Samaritan is a part of this. So that's the first thing. Good Samaritan. There's other things that we can find out here.
This report.
Does that mean right there at that spot in those bushes, or could it have been, down the street at a restaurant?
It was in very close proximity to where he was spotted by the Secret Service. In terms of your first question, whether he was there earlier, our investigation is still working to determine that.
Ryan Wesley Ralph may have been laying in wait from his spot in the bushes at Trump International Golf Club for nearly 12 hours. That's according to court documents unsealed today, showing Ralph's phone was in the vicinity of the area starting as early as 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Prosecutors also revealed in court documents that the serial number on the rifle recovered from the area where Ralph was spotted was unreadable to the naked eye.
So he's already been charged with some crimes. One of those crimes is having a weapon with no serial number. So this was a weapon that had the serial number scraped off, right? And possibly not a legal purchase of a firearm. And so this isn't going to be good for gun grabbing because it wasn't an AR-15, it was an AK-47, a Russian rifle, when he's anti-Russian, anti-Putin, which we'll get into in a bit as well. And so this is more information being released about which direction they're going to take this. It'd be hard for them to take this in a gun control direction because this guy had an illegal firearm, basically. And he's been charged with possessing an illegal firearm, a weapon of mass destruction, some sort of machine gun that he had in the past. So this guy was getting weapons that he shouldn't have been able to get, not through the legal system. So it's hard for them to make this into a gun grabbing situation here. It's another part of the narrative that they're putting out there. This isn't the typical narrative where it's he illegally bought an AR-15 and misused it, and they can say we got to get rid of these guns, we got to get rid of the AR-15, these assault weapons, because this guy was, he was into some military stuff here. that is, not something you're just going to find at your local like gun store or something, right? So that's another piece of the puzzle. They're not taking this in the traditional direction.
Just before 2 p.m., Secret Service noticed the barrel of a rifle poking through a fence at Trump International Golf Club. Trump was somewhere between the 5th and 6th hole at the time.
When you look at the map, you see a roadway very close to holes 5 and 6, which it would make sense that that would be a location if you were going to try to take a shot, it would be closer. And would give you an opportunity to do so and also give you an escape route.
So the guy laid in wait because he knew that Trump was eventually going to golf there. Like this wasn't part of Trump's schedule, his official schedule, and we'll get into that. Some of this could be about redeeming the Secret Service or asking for new laws, more restrictive laws, and more, we'll get into that more as we go through this here.
Escape route.
The Secret Service fired on the man with the gun before he fled.
He did not fire or get off any shots at our agents.
Secret Service took an absolute beating after the first one. And, the fact the guy got off so many shots and they could have taken him out 9 minutes before, and that even got access to Trump in the roof. I mean, then they let Trump expose his head in case there was a second shooter. All of those things were horrible. I mean, they completely failed. These guys were more like WWE actors or something at some fake WWE event than they were real Secret Service agents. And so this narrative that they got the guy, they shot at him, but he never got shot off, and he never got shot off at Trump, is redeeming to them. So that's, part of this story. This guy's going to bring in a lot of new rules. That might be part of this as well, so that they can do things to prevent these things in the future. And so Secret Service could be getting thousands upon thousands of new agents, and they could be infringing on your rights. Like that could be part of this thing. And that seems like it is part of the thing based on what we're going to hear later on.
A quick-thinking witness at the scene provided authorities with a description of the suspect, as well as a picture of the car and license plate. Martin County deputies detained Routh a short time later. CNN obtained this body cam video of Routh's arrest.
The witness from the incident at Trump International was flown to the scene by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and he was able to make a positive ID.
Okay, again with this Good Samaritan, right? And I don't know how they're going to use that in this narrative, because the Good Samaritan was more important to the Secret Service of this situation, right? Somebody spying. I mean, I don't know how somebody would even be around this area, right? Very exclusive. I mean, these are rich people that live there. So I don't know if this person worked at the golf course. I mean, maybe there'll be some more narrative about this person, but this person is the real hero here that they're putting out there. There's always going to be heroes in these narratives, and I'll come back to that later.
In the bushes at the golf club, authorities recovered an SKS-style rifle with a scope.
So remember, I couldn't find the other fucking rifle anywhere, whether it had a scope or not. I kept on asking that because there's no way that guy makes that shot with just a laser, with like the laser part of the gun, this laser scope. Like he has to have a quality scope to make a shot that's a football field and a half away. And again, this guy's not a professionally trained sniper or ex-military. We don't know. He had all these guns, so we don't know what his expertise is. But they already have this gun described more than the other gun. It took months before they even showed you a picture of the other gun. And it just had the factory laser sight that came with the gun, right? So, but it took months for us to find that out. And so we're already getting much more information about this than we did about the last one.
2 backpacks equipped with ceramic tiles for a makeshift bulletproof vest, and a GoPro. Since then, a complicated picture has emerged of Ryan Routh, a 58-year-old small business owner from Hawaii. CNN has learned that Routh supported Trump in 2016, but later dismissed him as a buffoon and a fool. Routh also mentioned Trump in his book titled Ukraine's Unwinnable War. Routh traveled to Ukraine in 2022 and encouraged others to sign up to fight. He did an interview with AFP news agency from Kyiv in April that year.
Putin is a terrorist, and he needs to be ended.
Court documents also detail past run-ins with the law, including felony convictions in North Carolina. In 2002, he pleaded guilty to felony possession of a weapon of mass destruction and carrying a concealed weapon.
now we know 1,000 times more about this guy than we ever heard about the last guy. We know about his political leanings. We have video of him doing interviews, all these types of things, right? This guy is already well established. There's more coming up about that. So the other guy was not a factor. His personality, there was no manifesto, right? These guys always write manifestos. You know who writes manifestos? The intelligence community, right? Ordinary people don't write manifestos. Like all these guys had a certain personality profile that the intelligence community had created over many years, like a profile. These loner, gunmen, angry, these kind of, I forget the term for it. People like the Joker movie, right? These guys who can't get dates, right? These, losers, kind of loner, whatever they are. And they write manifestos because that's just what they do. And this guy has a lot of information about him. His whereabouts is, he has a book out, he has interviews, and there was nothing on the other guy. So that's a different direction they're taking this one. They're not continuing on with what they did with the first one. This is, a very extensive profile of this guy, and there's even more to come here.
Other charges over the years included possession of stolen goods, driving without a registration, and failing to pay his taxes on time. Still, unanswered questions remain, including how safe is Trump and others given the current political environment.
I have ordered a paradigm shift. The Secret Service's protective methodologies work. We need to look at what our protective methodology is. We need to get out of a reactive model and get to a readiness model.
And Wolf, we also learned from that press briefing that the FBI has interviewed 7 civilian witnesses at the scene, so they are trying to learn more about just what happened. We also...
Okay, so if you're going to break this thing down, well, let me show you more of these things, right? But there's the Secret Service element we just saw. The Secret Service is going to do a paradigm shift. I have another longer clip about that. I'll show you that in a second here.
Him going to Ukraine to try to sign up to fight on behalf of the Ukrainians, to him publishing a self-published book in which he encouraged the Iranians to assassinate Trump. He's got a long criminal history. He was convicted of possessing a weapon of mass destruction back in 2002 in North Carolina, a machine gun, and that's why he's charged as a felon in possession with a firearm, as we learn more and more about this person who does not appear to have had a full grip on reality on him.
Jesse Kirsch and Kendallanian, thanks for bringing us the latest information.
So if this guy is a felon, then he can't buy these weapons, right? He's a guy who's with a criminal history. The other thing is they know about this guy, right? And I'm going to come back to this as we go through these, but they know about this guy. This guy's got to be on their radar. He's going to fucking Ukraine and trying to volunteer. He's got a GoFundMe page for Ukrainians. He's done interviews. He's out there. He's got social media stuff. He's got a book where he's encouraging a foreign government to assassinate a president, right, in Trump, the Iranians. And so they know about this guy. There's no way this guy isn't on their radar. The amount of spying they do, they have this guy flagged. Like, they know this guy. He's probably one of theirs, right? He's one of their assets or operatives. But they know that even if he wasn't, they would totally know about this guy. He is a complete perfect patsy. And let's I'm going to switch to my other screen flow, and I'm going to show you the rest of this clip here with that. Okay, so usually what I do is I take these clips and I airdrop them from my phone right onto my computer. Then I post them in Premiere Pro, and I show you the clip, and then I do my narration. This one I'm doing, I'm using QuickTime and showing you the rest of this clip because I want to point some things out with a big giant colossal cursor here.
Service head is saying there needs to be a paradigm shift. What do you think he means by that?
So he said a couple of things during that conference. One of the things he noted was that off-the-record movement, OTR. So traditionally, OTRs, they're for any protectee. It means they're going somewhere. It's not on their schedule, right? It's not made public. But one of the arguments you can make here, yes, it was an off-the-record movement, but President Trump was going to a golf course that he frequents. So does that truly warrant having less security, so to speak? The paradigm shift, also, I think he's referring to.
Okay, so this would mean that if they have an official event where a person would know the president's going to be there, something like what happened at Dallas with JFK, where he was assassinated. That everybody knew he was coming to Dallas, so they had to have time to, and they knew the route, so they had time to set up, a sniper and these things, right? But if they don't know where he's going to be, then this guy figured Trump is going to go golfing at some point, and he sat in the bushes for 12 hours waiting for Trump. With think about sitting somewhere. This guy, I mean, if he doesn't have any military background, can you imagine going and sitting in the woods, hiding with your rifle? I mean, you're waiting to be picked up. I mean, there's going to be Secret Service and police all over that place because Trump's going to come there. The president, the former president, the guy who's running for president, is going to come there. There's been a recent assassination attempt, and he's sitting in the woods. They have these little bits of woods, like 20 feet of woods that are around a golf course, right? 30 feet of woods between the road and the golf course to stop stray balls from hitting cars and things like that, right? And the woods aren't necessarily, they're kept up. They're not, this is a high-end. West Palm Beach is one of the richer parts of Florida, and where Trump is, this golf course. And if you've gone to West Palm Beach, it has got a ton of money in there. It's just really wealthy people. Famous people and wealthy people go down there. It's close to Miami, these things. And, it's this golf course is some exclusive golf course. This guy's sitting in the woods going unnoticed for 12 hours, right? Like, how does that even happen? Like, how does, like, not like somebody who's, in charge of the course, groundskeeper, or these other people see him be there, right? But there's a lot there's a lot there that I want to get back to.
Is the outer perimeter. Here we have two incidents. First incident in July. Again, the issue was what? Outer security. Here we have another incident.
So are they going to do
outer security? So that lends to.
So are they going to do something to now in terms of a power grab for the Secret Service? There's a guy that they could have red flagged, and they could have just locked this guy away for being dangerous, for threatening Trump in his book, something like that, right? Anybody on social media that says anything that would lead to believe that that person was a threat can now be detained. I mean, can be locked up just for that. I mean, where are they going to go with this? Do you understand? In terms of a power grab, because now they're looking at not just Trump's schedule, but everywhere he goes, somebody could show up like this guy. And so what does that mean for the people in this community in terms of Secret Service? Like, what if there's 1,000 Secret Service agents around the golf course, right? I mean, these people have exclusive homes around there. I'll show you. They show you the map here in a second.
Basically tell the story about we're not securing these outer perimeters in a way that's functioning anymore. Traditionally, you lend that responsibility to local law enforcement. But the fact that this individual...
Okay, so these are really wealthy places around here, I would assume, right? Like, these are, look at this part of the club here, I think. This is some, fancy golf course with all this water and this stuff, and, high-end golf course. And you see there's some woods here, but these aren't real woods. Like, this isn't like the guy's in the wilderness, right? I think he's over here, the guy said, by the 5th hole earlier on. If I can pull up that clip here. So you can see up here, this is where Trump, the 5th and 6th hole is. We're going to take a look at that other map in a second. Trump was over here somewhere. He's at the 5th hole over here. Between the 5th and 6th hole, here's the water. The guy's over at the woods. Let me go back to the other video here. So this is where Trump is, right? And so the shooter is somewhere here in the woods. It's something to think about because the Secret Service fired at this guy. And, when you see movies and TV shows and you see car chases and you see cops discharging their weapons at potential shooters and just going off in a crowded civilian area. And whenever you learn about shooting, you have to realize the path of your bullet, right? Like, we have coyotes that a couple years ago we had some that came into our yard. We had one. And, we have chickens and things. And so if I were to shoot at that coyote, for example, I got to think about what's behind the coyote. My neighbor's, dog or something, somebody driving in, an Amazon driver driving down my neighbor's driveway or something like that, right? You just can't shoot at something and hope you hit it. And if you miss it, like where's the bullet going to go? Where's the path of the bullet? So if they had snipers or people firing into these woods, and there's maybe the club behind them there, or civilian areas. I mean, this is he's over here somewhere, either in these woods here. They think maybe he's in this woods, and there's a bunch of houses over here. I'm editing this clip. I'm not sure why this video is coming out like this, that it's so bright. I might have accidentally hit a filter on my phone as I tried to turn the volume up. I usually, or it's just whatever reason. But I'm going to go to Google Earth in a bit here, and you'll get a better view of this thing. You can get the general sense of it, although this is not the best picture here. All right, let's get back to it here. And so where's the sniper set up? If there's water here, if Trump was somewhere in here, in this area golfing, and this guy's right in the woods, he'd be really close to Trump, right? I mean, it would be a nothing shot, especially with the scope. And so this guy's, right here in this small strip of woods here somewhere, with the road here. He's parked on the side of the road. His car is probably, in an legally parked for 12 hours. A lot of this stuff doesn't, big giant colossal cursor knows. This is a busy road here, right, around Trump's golf course, and there's residents living here. And then who is the person that sees him? Was somebody walking their dog along the sidewalk? They see the guy in his car parked up on the sidewalk for 12 hours, and you're aware a former president is about to golf, and nobody notices it, right? So the whole thing looks pretty suspect. I mean, I don't know exactly. They said he was over here between the 5th and 6th holes. Here's the 6th hole over here. And he's waiting for Trump. Trump was over here when they found the guy. So he waited all that time without anybody noticing him in this very thin strip of woods. But what about his car? Nobody noticed his car? Like they said they had drones and people going through this. But, this is not security, right?
Had taken post for 12 hours, and at no point it seems that anybody did a perimeter security sweep of the exterior of the golf course, of the fence line. Nothing was caught. I don't know. I do understand that drones were used, but I believe my understanding is that drones were used in that immediate area where Trump was golfing. But
so here's something I want to show you here.
Both instances as well.
So we go back here. They've blocked out this area. What does he have, like plumber's crack? Like, what's going on that they've...
Assassination attempts towards President Trump.
He's got a tramp stamp here or something, or it's he's got a tattoo that says CIA forever. Like
we're seeing people doing it from a distance. As an agent, one of the focus that they give you is close proximity attackers, rope lines, crowds of people.
Yeah. And so, like many of these other stories, he's not alive. I mean, he's alive. In the other stories, they kill the guy. The fact that this guy's alive means there's going to be a trial, means that this guy's going to become a public figure, depending on how... I mean, this is not nearly as significant as the other event with Trump's fake blood and the ketchup and all the bullshit that went with it, right? This is, like a lesser event comparatively. But there's going to be a lot more coverage of the guy. We already know so much more about him. He has a history. He has a point of view. There's interviews. There's video of him that they're talking about. I'll show you some of that as I switch over to my stuff that I have up on my toolbar. And so there's a lot going on here that wasn't going on during the first shooting, which was mostly about Trump saying fight, 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 and segueing right into the Republican National Convention, where this story more or less disappeared after that. And this story seems to be, they're really focused on producing a much more extensive narrative, from introducing the Good Samaritan to really developing this guy as a character here.
And traditionally the shift, which are the agents around him, that's really their main goal: intercepting, looking at hands, what's coming at me, who's in the bleachers. But here we're seeing something else. The exterior, the exterior, the exterior. Yep. The components that usually monitor those things would be counter sniper, which takes position to look out for other snipers. Now, I do believe that in this situation, he did have a counter sniper element, but for whatever reason, wherever they were positioned, they did not see the shooter.
Well,
He
how many
also
counter?
talked about having a more
So how many counter snipers, are they going to have on this golf course? So they'd have to have one and pretty much going into all these. They'd have to go through these areas. You couldn't go through have Trump golfing again. If they want to kill you, they can kill you. I mean, this would be an easy way because of the woods. If they're not going to search the woods, then you know how close the woods are to the golf course itself, and they could just wait there. And if they're not going to search the woods, then that would be the easiest way to get him, right? This was lucky that they somehow saw this guy. I mean, again, they should have seen. It's not lucky because this car was parked somewhere over here. There's no parking on the side of these roads, right? There's no parking next to like a golf course. These are roads that are, let's, I'll go to Google Maps here and we'll check that out after I'm done with this here.
shooter. He also talked about having a more proactive rather than reactive element when it comes to protection. So basically what he's saying.
So proactive is a guy like this who has a profile that looks like he could possibly be a threat. These people would be identified. I mean, this is like pre-crime. Where are they going to go with this, right? Like you have to look at, the narrative and what they might be pushing for here in terms of taking away more of your rights. Like this is what this is about.
We need to do a lot more up front to prevent these from even happening.
And, the right-wing people who would be against this kind of power grab will be more for it because it would happen to Trump and not Biden.
Because I do sadly think that we might see more of these. The moment somebody...
You do? There might be more of these? You sadly think there might be more of this, dude? Bro, there might be many more of these things. Just like another one, right? It's another one. Okay, so here is the Trump International Golf Course. So this is, I don't know what this is, Palm Beach County Criminal Justice Complex. So there's a prison over here. So this is a secure area. So he wasn't over by the prison side, right? So this is private area here. So this is a prison, and here's the rest of the golf course. Scroll out. So here's the golf course here, and then they cross over here. This is not a road here. This is a prison here. This is secure. There's going to be barbed wire fencing, and there's some area here where they have, possible alligators, like, like you have these alligator areas there, right? So this is the area where the sniper was most likely. And you can see here, there's no cars on the sidewalk here. This is the sidewalk area here, and there's the road. So there's no real way to park. Like, there's these places where you can't park cars. You don't see any parked cars here when they're, this is not a side road. Then over here, possibly, you could have been on this side. You can see this is a busy, you have a shoulder of the road. So this guy parked his car for 12 hours on the side of the road in a very ritzy area, placed next to a frickin' prison, and nobody noticed this car. No cop came along and tagged it with one of those orange stickers for towing away, and nobody was concerned about a car that was parked outside the golf course. Just people driving into the golf course going, well, there's some car over there that Trump is going to be out. There's a recent assassination attempt. It seemed very suspect, that part of the story, right? And so, again, there's very little woods here. Like you see, there's a shrub here, shrub area, it looks like. This place isn't lush. I mean, Florida isn't like a jungle. They have the Everglades, and there's places like that, but these are developed areas, and these trees are all, a lot of these would be palm trees. This guy's sitting here in a very small strip of woods here. Again, he can't be on this side because there's this is where Trump was anyway, and this is the fifth hole. And Trump's, this guy was sitting over here, maybe in the woods over here. His car could have parked somewhere along here illegally. Just things really suspect, right? I mean, this is a developed area. Look at, this is a city. Like, this is all, there's not like, so again, with the amount of rich people that live around here, this must be the club area here. So, it looks just so not believable. I mean, the story's never believable, but this particularly so. So let me get into the narrative here. So let me start off by saying why we have an intelligence community, or why there's intelligence community, a dirty tricks department, a covert operations department of our government. There have been Aboriginal societies and there have been cultures that have lived on this planet where people share everything and they love each other, and each person is about putting the community and other people before themselves. What we talk about, what politicians say at the DNC and the RNC, and when they're running for office, and they try to define themselves, and they bring in all their friends and neighbors and actors and fake people and publicists to tell you how they've been sacrificing for other people their whole life, and they're going to sacrifice for you now. You know, it was what Walsh was saying about Kamala Harris, is that she was a prosecutor and she had one client, and that was the American people, right? All that bullshit. But there have been cultures where people were actually like that. And there are people like that in society that are constantly sacrificing and being there for other people. And, you know, good parents do this for their kids at least, right? But there's some people who do it for everybody. And they, you know, work for God, and they have a connection to the divinity within them and the divinity within everything around them, everybody, every creature, the planet itself. And they just want to serve and do good and bring good things to whatever it is, the environment, the community, the world, and they want to make the world a better place, right? The problem is people like that are not going to, in most cases, be able to protect themselves and other people from evil sociopathic people or cultures, you know, warlike cultures that just come in and dominate other groups of people, right? So you just need about 10% of the population to be really selfish, narcissistic, hostile, but also fucking greedy. And so specifically for our culture and our society, the capitalist system, there are haves and there are have-nots. And when there are haves, the haves are always worried about the have-nots, right? And so whenever you have haves, and you could have a whole, you know, America is a have country. America has, and the rest of the world, you know, various places, not so much Europe, not so much Canada, not so much, you know, other countries, at least parts of other countries. But the majority of peoples outside of America are have-nots, right? India is a have-nots of 1 billion people, 1.3 billion. China is a have-not country with 1.4 billion people. People in the Middle East and Africa are have-nots. People in South America and Mexico are have-nots, right? And then there are, of course, have-nots in America itself. I mean, there are have-nots outnumber the haves, right? So the have-nots make up about 80% of the population, and the haves make up about 20% of the population, with the people who are really the haves making up less than 1% of the population. And so why there's an intelligence community and why there are a police force is to keep the have-nots away from the haves, right? The haves want to make sure that the have-nots don't come steal their shit, because the haves outnumber the have-nots outnumber the haves. You know, there's that great scene, Kevin Spacey plays a grasshopper, and he talks about, you know, well, let me just show you the clip there from A Bug's Life.
There was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss, they're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this?
Okay, so I don't know if I could use the whole clip here because it might be copyrighted. I'll share the rest of it if I can. Otherwise, you get the idea here, right, that the masses will overwhelm them. He later goes on to say that the ants outnumber his people 100 to 1.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, they're...
And so you have a police force and you have an intelligence community that's here to prevent that from happening, right? There's nothing that the people that control the system fear more than the mob. But they also help the rest of us, all of us Americans, retain our lifestyle Because when you have a debt-based economy that's based in illusion, based in, it's a con game, and it's not something based in divinity, and it's not based in our better selves. It's not based in our wanting to share with other people. It's about possession. It's about mine and yours and me and you. It's about the killer instinct. It's about dominating other people. It's about dominating, the world. It's about accumulating hordes of resources for yourself, right? And that we've all been trained in that system. And so the people who have want to make sure that the have-nots don't gang up and take it away from them. And as an American country, that's a have country. And then, of course, the really rich people in America are scared about that from the Americans themselves, right? Now, the problem is when there is a mob and you have, some sort of a coup or a takeover by the mob, you can see what happens. Look at it's like in Iran now. Look at what's happened in Russia and Cuba and some of these other countries. It doesn't get better. When the people rise up and take from the haves, what's happened in China. Like, these are some of the worst places in the world to live in, right? Where people, ordinary citizens, got fed up with the bullshit from the rich people. And, rightfully so. And they came in and took over from the rich people. And there's countries in Africa and South America and all over the globe where this has happened. And now they have completely fucked countries, right? Where the people can't run it itself because the systems that you have put in place don't work. And it's worse off now than it was before. The people are worse off now than they were before. The same thing is in the case of when America goes in and takes out a leader, like they did in Iran. That's what happened in Iran. That's what they did in Libya with Gaddafi. And even if the leader is a bad guy, which wasn't in those two cases, both Mossadegh in Iran and Gaddafi in Libya were good leaders. And now the countries are a mess. So when you have that kind of immediate crumbling of the government and takeover by the mob, because that's what happened in both those countries. And so when that happens, we know what the outcome is. It's a fucking mess. So, nobody really wants that either. And the CIA and the intelligence communities, as evil as they are, they do their best to prevent something like that from happening here in America, which is, in some ways, at least on a material level, benefit all of us here. The other problem they have is that the American citizens are armed, and there's 450,000 rifles, guns in America. There are firearms, and a lot of those firearms are automatic weapons. And so if the government has to pull some raw shit, like asset forfeiture, we talked about that. Trump didn't know what the fuck that was in that one video I showed you, the dummy Trump, right? And, some of the things they're going to have to do, or there's a breakdown in our society. And we already saw it, how it happened during COVID, when you will go to the store and there wasn't a roll of toilet paper for about 3 weeks, right? And Costco was bringing in like bamboo toilet paper. And, they had run out of whatever their normal stores were. And that people went nuts. There wasn't any canned goods. People completely panicked over something that was turned out to be, on a lot of levels, pretty bogus. But what if there was a real thing that happened? You saw how people started just grabbing for themselves. And what would happen if there was no police and no, there's no rule of law, and you have all these armed people? Or let's say these armed people get really pissed off, Trump gets assassinated or something, and they decide to, form some sort of, this movie I watched, the Civil War movie, which was about that. And there's, armed militia. The other part of the issue is there's a lot of ex-military who have been trained to be elite, some of the most elite fighting force in our history. And these people are, for the most part, pissed off at America. They feel wronged, ex-military people. And they have this elite training, they're armed, and they have a lot of people around them who are armed, and they know how to execute the kind of, military operations that America does so well, right? We have the most elite army in the world, and these people are angry at America and frustrated, and they're armed, and they're trained, and and the military itself can turn on the government because of that. Like, some of these people still have connections. There's people in the military who have questions about the government, all these things. And so this is the kind of shit that the CIA is trying to hold together. And this is why they do psychological operations to move people in a certain direction So they can take away your rights, and they can, do whatever they're going to do. They have to have some sort of an outcome, right? And so when they do these psychological operations, or there's something like this, whether this event is organic or not, I don't believe it is. But either way, they have an agenda, and they roll out these information packages. And I've talked about this the last time we had this fake assassination attempt. And, like day 2, today is day 3. They're rolling out more and more. We'll get into this guy. So now they're focused on the guy, who he is, what he believed in, what kind of person he was, right? Maybe they'll come back to the Good Samaritan. Maybe they'll come back to the weapon itself. Who knows where the focus is going to lie. And you see the Democrats are pitching it one way, they're always going to push gun control. And Trump is saying, well, it's because you guys' rhetoric is so unfair towards me, which of course is Trump's position, which is, everyone's got to know that's bullshit, right? Trump is, talking about Haitian people eating cats, and then he whines about people saying mean, bad things about him, right? Oh, she's so nasty. Like, he thinks that everything he says is justified because he's trying to save democracy, and that, his personality is flawless, right? He can't understand why people hate him. And, anybody with half a brain knows why people hate Trump. And he should know, but he's too narcissistic to admit to it. So as these information packets hit the news media, then you have to adjust and figure out what they're doing, right? If you already come in with this preconceived idea that Trump is going to save America and you're a right-wing person, like so many of these, fake truthers are. So these fake truthers, you're watching their videos. Someone said to me that he watched like 60 videos and only 3 of them even questioned the idea that maybe it might be a staged fake shooting, and Trump's blood wasn't, his ketchup he had in his ear wasn't real. So you have to list the things that you're seeing here. And I might not be seeing it all. I haven't watched a lot of news. Today I was making a video yesterday or whatever that wasn't about this. And I just, it's hard for me to watch the news now. I just don't care about it. And I don't feel like I have to go through people's trash. But, I'm making these videos. And so what we've seen so far, there's the Good Samaritan. That's a new storyline we haven't seen before, right? And we don't know if they're going to push that. This was an illegitimate weapon that was acquired by a person with a felony for owning a weapon of mass destruction, someone who had trouble with the law. This is a guy who obviously was on the radar of intelligence community because he's going to these countries and all the things that I said earlier, him wanting to volunteer for the Ukrainians, and a book he wrote that was disturbing and had a lot of stuff that was, stuff that was a red flag. This guy was a walking red flag for all these things. And maybe he's, been created that way. Maybe this is a new profile they just made, or he's been acting this way for a while, waiting to be activated. They have these sleeper cells, whatever. This is what I think probably it is. But whatever it is, they're focusing on this guy. And I'm going to get more into him after I'm done with this narration here, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of stories out there, and focusing on that guy. We know a lot about this guy and his agenda. Of course, Trump, the other narration here is Trump is saying it's the Democrats. Of course, that isn't going to take hold other than for him and his people, that it's their fault and their rhetoric that are causing people to want to harm him, even though we know the first guy, who Trump never even talked about, was clearly a patsy, and that was clearly a staged event, and Trump was clearly a part of it to make Trump look like a tough guy and a badass, as he did this WWE thing for dum-dums who fall for that kind of shit, right? It's embarrassingly bad. It's so sloppily done. It's the fact that anybody would believe it's real is, quite disturbing in itself, right? They can just roll out anything and people believe it, especially, if you're leaning that way. But then there's this other narrative about the Secret Service having a huge power grab. So these are all the things that are in play here, right? This is the stuff that they're pushing for. This is the stuff that they are focused on. And we'll see how this develops over time. And there might be other events. This won't be the only event to push that agenda. You look at all the events they pushed out just to grab the guns, and they still haven't been able to get the guns. But going into this desperate time where America is going to face some real issues, they really have to take away these guns at one point, or the American people are just going to go apeshit and come up against the government, and that's not going to end well for anybody. So their agenda is getting more desperate because the stuff that they're doing hasn't been working, and we'll see where this one goes. But you can tell there's these storylines they've put into this narration, and some of these things are new. All right, so let's go check out this guy again. Okay, so let's start off here. This was Donald J. Trump the day after, so on Monday, September 16th. He did an interview here with crypto people.
And I think that many in the crypto community will agree with me when I say that we're here with you, Mr. President, during these trying times. Your unwavering support for our community has not gone unnoticed, and we're immensely grateful for it. And really, the fact...
Wow, who is this guy?
that after all of this, you've chosen to proceed with this interview blows my mind. It speaks volume, Mr. President.
Okay, so not shot at, no shots were fired at him. Some guy, we'll get into the guy over here, a former Trump supporter or voter, was caught in his golf course. This guy's praising Trump for sitting in his home in Mar-a-Lago and talking about cryptocurrency to a bunch of people who he hopes to win over as voters. It's amazing Trump able to carry on doing a interview from within his house a day after some guy did take a shot at him.
President, and thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the remarks. It was quite something, but it worked out well, and Secret Service did an excellent job. And they have the man behind bars, and hopefully he's going to be there for a long time. Dangerous person, very, very dangerous person. But I appreciate the comments very much.
Well, I appreciate you for allowing me to interview you in your wonderful Mar-a-Lago home, which is truly an honor, and I'm very grateful for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, I can say that myself, like I was saying, in the crypto community, and millions of Americans are relieved that you're here with us today after the second attempt on your life at the Trump National Golf Club. It's just horrifying. Can you run us through what happened?
So I was playing golf with some of my friends. It was on a Sunday morning.
I mean, so horrible. He's got to play golf at his own, one of two private golf courses. His private golf club that he goes to in one of the most expensive parts of one of the best states in the country of Florida.
And very peaceful, very beautiful weather. Everything was beautiful. It was a nice place to be. And all of a sudden we heard shots being fired in the air. And I guess probably 4 or 5. And it sounded like bullets, but what do I know about that? But Secret Service knew immediately. It was.
You don't know about bullets? You've never, you wouldn't know it's bullets fired. Like, I have neighbors who shoot their guns off all the time, and we always know it's. But when people are shooting guns, it's. I mean, I think it was bullets. I don't know what it could be. Fireworks. There's a big difference between fireworks. We also have neighbors who shoot off fireworks. People within where we can hear things. We also have a quarry where they blow up stone, and there's some sort of explosions from that from time to time. And you can tell the difference. Like, he doesn't, come on.
Bullets. And they grabbed me, and I think probably the other one, Steve is one of the people, Steve Witkoff, a great friend of mine, a great businessman from mostly New York and Florida, great businessman. And more importantly, just a fantastic person. So we're in the group, and everybody we got into the carts, and we moved along pretty good. I was with an agent, and the agent did a fantastic job. There was no...
into the golf carts. Just sounds like such a... Did you get to finish your golf game? That's what I want to know. It would be a tragedy if you couldn't finish golfing on your private golf course.
No question that we were off that course. I would have loved to have sank that last putt, but we decided, well, let's get out of here. And what the gunfire was actually, interestingly, was a Secret Service agent had seen a barrel of a AK-47, which is a very powerful rifle, and he started shooting at the barrel.
He started shooting at the barrel, so he missed dreadfully, and so Good Samaritan saved your bacon.
In the bushes.
Wow.
Could only see the barrel. How good is that, right? But could only see the barrel. Based on that, he started shooting and ran toward the target.
Good thing it wasn't a kid with a toy gun.
And was shooting a lot of, those were the shots we heard. The other one never got a shot off. And he ran across the street and grabbed his car, hopped into his truck or car. And amazingly, a civilian in that area saw something and it looked very suspicious. And in the car, drove their car to the back of his truck of some kind and took pictures of the license plate.
It's crazy, that guy. What a good Samaritan. You're lucky that there's so many good people around.
Gave them to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Bradshaw is fantastic, very great sheriff for a long time.
Sheriff Bradshaw is the fucking best.
And within a fairly short period of time, they tracked him down on the highway. It was a pretty high-speed chase. And they ended up getting him. They got him. Because you wouldn't want to have somebody like that out there.
No.
You know, he dropped his gun, the AK-47. He left his gun. He left
his gun.
Cameras behind, left a lot of things behind. So the agent did a fantastic job. The civilian did a phenomenal job. A woman. I mean, who would think you could take 1,000 times like that? How many people would have the brain power to...
Okay, so this woman, is she going to be a celebrity? Are we going to get to meet her at some point? She's going to tell her story? She's going to be celebrated? You're going to roll her out at a speaking engagement? What's going to happen with her?
Follow him and
Not
take
many.
pictures of the back of his truck.
Was it Kamala? It was a woman, Kamala.
So that they end up getting, and the key was the license. So they got the license, and after they had the license, you know, there's all sorts of technology where they can...
Exactly. We'll get into that. I got to talk about that. My wife and I are watching a show from England about their surveillance program. Excellent show to watch on Peacocks. You know, I'm just talking about how bad Peacock sucks. But, you know, it's brutal what they have, surveillance.
Can literally pinpoint where this truck is. I never knew something like that existed.
Sure you did.
And they pinpointed him on the highway. They got him with a high-speed chase. So they got him. It was amazing. So Secret Service did a great job. And I think I can say honestly, the sheriff's office, law enforcement, everybody really did a great job.
Incredible.
Very happy about that.
That's incredible to hear.
Thank you.
And backup question to that second fold is, you know, this was the second attempt in your life in under 2 months. What do you make of that?
Well, there's a lot of rhetoric going on.
Right.
A lot of people think that the Democrats, when they talk about threat to democracy and all of this.
You talk about the exact same thing, though. You guys are both saying the exact same fucking things about the other side. You just said that Kamala Harris is a threat to democracy. So therefore, if she gets shot, is it your fault? Like, he just is so... He's just a child, right? I mean, he might be playing a character, but otherwise he's just a child.
And it seems that both of these people were radical lefts. The first one, they should learn more about. They have...
This guy voted for you, bro. He's clearly, with his weapons obsession and some of his other warlike tendencies, he doesn't seem like he's radical left at all.
apps that they haven't opened yet, which is pretty strange. And the father went out and got the biggest lawyer in the state of Pennsylvania, which is pretty strange, about the father of the shooter we're talking about in Butler, the first one. And that's pretty strange. There are a couple of pretty strange things going on there. I can say this, the Secret Service was very brave in the sense that bullets were flying, and when I went down, I purposely went down. I saw...
Okay, so we get the idea from Trump. I would listen to that because I'm sure he contradicts things he said previously, but, you know, everyone should know that thing's fake by now. The ketchup gate. But let's go CNN and learn more about Ryan Wesley Roth.
We expect to see the suspect in the apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump in his first court appearance. It's unclear what charges he will face, but we're expected to learn more about that today. Ryan Wesley Roth was taken into custody following the shooting incident with Secret Service Sunday. He was stopped, you see a picture there, stopped on the highway in nearby Martin County. Joining us right now is Martin County, Florida Sheriff William Snyder. Sheriff, thank you very much for coming on. How did you stop him, and take this man into custody?
Good morning, Kate. Well, what happened is this. After the attempted assassination...
Okay, so let's move on to the...
And it was...
So it says the oddest part about his arrest here.
It's perplexing. You know, somebody who... Actually, at the time, we weren't positive that we had the suspect. We had the vehicle. We thought we had him. But his facial affect was so flat his demeanor was relaxed. I honestly thought it looked like somebody who had just left a church picnic and was on his way home. And I mean, the interstate was crawling with law enforcement. We had
So maybe the guy wasn't even there, and they just targeted this patsy. He had no idea why he was being pulled over.
SWAT team had gotten out there.
Okay,
right.
so if he saw all that, then, why was he relaxed when he sees all these, military people? I mean, getting arrested or pulled over, you get, you get nervous, you get tight, you get whatever you are, right? Whatever way it affects you. But getting pulled over with the SWAT team and, the way that they backed him out, and he's saying this guy was completely relaxed, like he was a trained CIA asset.
Rifles, helicopter, I-95 shut down, a bomb dog, everything was there. He was as calm as really as if he was going for dinner.
Well, all that we have heard so far in the reporting is that he is not talking to investigators. Did he say anything at all during any of these interactions when you picked him up?
He's a real patriot. So let's go to this guy here.
Larger, bigger puzzle. What in his background sticks out to you, grabs your attention right now?
Well, I mean, the fact that he was arrested and charged with possession of a weapon of mass destruction, obviously he has a criminal record. The other charges, my understanding, are relatively minor. But as John Miller just mentioned, we don't know the disposition of that particular case. But obviously that stands out. The other thing that stands out to me is an open question, and that is, how did
he's just got such an award-winning smile.
he know the president was going to be on the golf course? I mean, this is an individual that apparently has scouted it out. When you look at the map.
Okay, so let's is there anything else here? Show you the golf course in animation here.
About planning. Also this fact that Trump's golf game on Sunday, it was a last-minute addition to his schedule, sources say. He had no public events planned. What does that say about pre-planning, lack thereof, or that how long he was there, or
There's a simulation
there was
of it.
some element of luck for this man?
See, like, it's hard to hide in an area like this, right? I mean, these trees are just palm trees, and, they have these little, or, whatever they are, palm trees or whatever those are. And, it's not like it's so dense you can't see somebody, right?
Not for, obviously, Secret Service and President Trump. How do you add all that together?
Well, the former president is...
Okay, so there's that, right? So this is a St. Louis news channel, local news, and there's a St. Louis connection.
Routh self-published a book in which he said a foreign country should feel free to assassinate Trump, and the editor of that book...
You mean you're giving him this Lord of the Manor is giving foreign governments permission to assassinate Trump, right?
Book, apparently his fiance, who is originally from right here in the region. That book,
St. Louis,
called Ukraine's Unwinnable War, is still available on Amazon.
You get this Unwinnable War. I think it's going to have a lot more sales now.
Right now. In its nearly 300 pages, Routh supported Ukraine and criticized the former president, at one point writing, quote, "I must take part of the blame for the child that we elected for our
The effing child.
next president that ended up being brainless. But I am man enough to say that I misjudged and made a terrible mistake, and Iran, I apologize. You are free to assassinate Trump as well as me for that error in judgment."
So you think Iran's going to assassinate you because you voted for Trump? Is Iran going to assassinate all the people that voted for Trump? Like, it's 60 million people, right?
The editor of that book, listed as Kathleen Schaefer. In a now deleted GoFundMe, Schaefer raised money for Routh, who she called her fiance, to travel to Kyiv in support of the Ukraine.
She's a local person here in this great city of St. Louis. Here he is here.
This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we've ever watched. This is definitely evil against good.
Okay, so I guess Trump's on the evil side. I'm flying to the Ukraine to fight for the kids and the families of the Ukrainians. I am willing to go and die for democracy. That's what he said, the guy.
We should have thousands upon thousands of people standing here with the Ukrainians. This Maiden Square, Independence Square, we should have millions of people in this square filling this square
it doesn't
from
seem
every
like a
country
liberal
around the world.
He doesn't seem like a liberal Democrat, right?
And why we don't, I don't understand. We need everybody here. You know, if you have no skills, just come. You know, we need to
take a bullet. If you stand in front of a Ukrainian and give him your tax money, and then let him, act as a shield, human shield, for somebody who is of Ukrainian descent who's actually willing to fight for his country. Even if you don't have any skills, you can still be a human shield.
We need to be cheerleaders. Just being here and saying, hey, I support the Ukrainians, and I support human rights, and I support good and generosity and caring and kindness and altruism. And it's just, we need to show the world
all those things by killing some freaking Ruskies.
that we care.
Okay, so that guy.
I'm 56 from the...
This is from Entertainment Tonight or Economic Times, one of the two. Probably Economic Times.
I'm 56 from the U.S., from North Carolina originally, so I live in Hawaii.
Why do you got like Cruella DeVille hair here, bro? Like he's got...
now, so flew all the way from Hawaii here. To me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil.
What are you doing here in Ukraine?
My initial goal was to come and fight. I think, everybody around the globe should be motivated to come here and support the Ukrainians and support the army. So plan B was to come here to Kyiv and promote getting...
What's plan C? Going to Mustang Beach and trying to take Trump out?
More people here. We need thousands and thousands and thousands.
Okay, so this guy here, right? We get the idea. This guy, Ryan Ross' son, Oran, weird name. He's my dad, and he's had his couple of traffic tickets as far as I know. That's crazy. I know my dad, and I love my dad, but this is nothing like him. Well, maybe you didn't know your dad also well, or maybe he's an operative and you didn't know that either, right? Or maybe you're an operative. Maybe you're not even his son. He's not a violent person. He's a hard worker and a great dad. He's a great dude, a nice guy, and has worked his whole effing life. Owen Roth. Okay, so I have a big picture of voiceover that I did this morning. Today is Wednesday, September 18th. The video will be up, I guess, tomorrow. It'll be public. But I just want to say that it seems like this story's dying. And, Trump wants to keep it alive, but certainly the liberal media doesn't. I couldn't find anything on it today when I was eating breakfast. I mean, they seem to have moved on. And, things that are, this is just going to be a, yeah, that happened kind of thing, right? And, the narration that went out, the narrative, like I said, we'll see how these things play out and, what they want to get out of this, right? We see that, they've developed this guy as a person, and he is, a disgruntled Republican, basically, right? Somebody who bought into Trump but then didn't like him. And, again, the gun is not a registered rifle, and then the Good Samaritan narrative. And I'll cover this more maybe next time if it's still a story. But let's get into this more profound ending here. I don't care what other people believe. And, whatever I'm doing here is a courtesy, right? Like, whatever I say here in terms of challenging people's realities, even to the extent of talking about gratefulness meditation, Sajmark meditation, and, that being the solution. What people do with it is completely up to them. And I don't think about it. I don't care about it. Once in a while, I get bummed out because of the, lack of response by humanity. I'm not hopeful about humanity's future. But, we haven't hit the wall yet. We haven't, had a come to Jesus moment, right? We haven't had the collapse of the system and some of the things that need to happen to, get people to change, right? Like there are things that are going to happen in the future that will hopefully be motivating for people to embrace their higher nature and see the folly of their, their ways or whatever it is. But like, I don't get into the results. I've said this before. The third master of the Sajmark system once wrote to me and said, we don't work for results, we work for God. You do the work and God has is the work is yours, and the results are His. And that's been something that I have gratefully embraced. It's been just a blessing on every level. Like, just do the work that you're supposed to do, and then surrender the results to God. Just make sure you're doing what you need to do, right? And so I don't get into all this kind of things, and and some part of me probably wants humanity to fail just based on everything I see or whatever it is. I shouldn't say that. Like, I think it's more, if humanity does fail, I get it, right? Like, I'm not like, oh man, that's that's a surprise. That's the way it's trending, right? But in all that, with just the depravity that you see here, the ridiculousness of Kamala Harris running against Donald J. Trump, two frauds. One of my longtime viewers, so someone said that they hadn't seen my channel in a while, made a comment that, they were glad to find my channel, and they were going to vote for Trump because Trump's policies were better for them. And I'm like, well, Trump isn't going to do what he said he's going to do. I'm going to get into that. Like, I even be able to cover some of this stuff because of all these big events keep on happening. But Trump is promising no tax on overtime. Like, he's just throwing things up against the wall with whatever he thinks is going to bring in votes. And, and I don't even know. I mean, I don't know nobody knows what the actual voting process is anymore. The legitimacy of it, right? Like, it doesn't even matter, right? So, like, he himself said it didn't matter last time that they cheated, that Biden didn't get all those votes. Well, Trump and the Republicans haven't done anything to stop that from happening again, right? At least there's no COVID for them to put in mail-in ballots. But Trump himself said that elections were fraudulent. So what's to say this one won't be either, right? And they always are rigged in some way or another. But in terms of, either one of the candidates, they're just jokes of people. I mean, they're like not real people. There's no depth. They'll say anything. They're not, there's no vision there. There's no ethics. There's no morality. They're just, complete liars and frauds. There's a new book out on Trump, and, there's so many books on Trump. I haven't covered any of them because, everyone was writing a book about him. But I watched some of this new book called Lucky Loser, and it sounds very accurate. And, because Trump's a fraud, right? And, he's always been a fraud. He's more entertaining and more likable than Kamala, but he's a fraud. They're fraudulent people. And she's a fraud. Like, she's just made up this, version of herself, right? And so with all of the evidence that's there, you think that people would start coming up with a backup plan. And I want to talk about that at the beginning, maybe in my next video. Hopefully I'll remember to do this. But you'd think people would start coming up with a backup plan. I think I've actually mentioned this before. Just hedge your bets a little bit and start thinking about what happens if America doesn't make it, right? What happens if America collapses? I mean, they're talking about it. Both of them are talking about a disastrous outcome if the other person's elected. I talked about that, I think, at the beginning of my last video. And so with Trump saying, this is the most important day in American history, the November 5th election day, because they're destroying the country. So Trump is openly saying that these people are destroying the country. And the other side saying, if we can't survive another Trump presidency, this is a battle for the soul of America, is what Biden used to say. And so if those things are being said, then the end of America is on the table. Like, we've never heard about anybody talking about the end of America, right? There are these empires. So here's a list of empires and then followed by a list of kingdoms. And I don't know what other words I could use. And these are just a fraction of what people know. This is only 5,000 years of history, and really less than that. And these are the various empires and kingdoms around the world that no longer exist or have collapsed. Everything collapses. And so knowing that there'll be a time when this empire, the English Empire, the European Empire, this modern day empire that has become the American Empire, will collapse. And what does that mean? Like, what'll be life after the collapse of the empire? And not just for America, but a global situation. do we retain our technology? Do we retain moving vehicles? The cars still exist. Do we have, running water? What's the hit on people's lifestyle, right? Certainly America's going to be reduced to some capacity. And that's something that happens and will happen and will continue to happen because everything dies, right? We'll come back to that. I want to talk more about death, which I've, talked about in a recent video. But if, you're a truther, if you're a real truther, like somebody seeking the truth, like, this is sort of a smell test, right, for truthers. If you're a truther, you understand that there is a shadow government. And I want to make a video called The Shadow Government. This is kind of a profound stuff. Some of it I think I've talked about, but some of it is new. It just came to me last night in a meditation. So if there's a shadow government, people who have power in the shadows that don't want to be known, right? Like there's people who don't value the humanity in other people. They don't want to be famous. They don't want to be famous. Like, do you want to be famous to a bunch of ants? Like, if you looked at people like they were ants or like, cows, like livestock or something, would you want to be famous to those people, right? Would you want their adoration and attention and fame, or would you just want to use them as a resource, like a livestock, right? So the people who run the planet, they don't want to be presidents and CEOs and people that you see. And if they are those people, they still want to minimize their fame, right? Like Trump, if he was so rich and all these things, he was on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and he was on The Apprentice, and he was on multiple talk shows. He was on all these various, the things that he put himself out there. He's in he wanted to be a part of the Home Alone movie in New York, the second Home Alone movie. Like he lobbied to be in that movie. He pushed for fame and everyone look at me, I'm really rich, right? The really, really rich people, they don't want any of that shit. Like they don't value the opinion of the what do they call them? The muggles, right? The Harry Potter thing. They live a completely separate life where, even in terms of the royal families and things like this, the royal family in England, sure, but all the other, these other, institutions and families, the Rothschilds and the banks and all these things, the royal family is a front for a multi-billion dollar empire and business that's run by a bunch of people, what they call the firm, all of these things, like the people in the shadows. So if you're a truther, you believe in a shadow government. People who don't want to be known, that they won't want the masses to know about them, but they're pulling the strings from the shadows, right? And so, the idea of a deep state, all these things, it's primitive idea of a shadow government. And really, we don't know who these people are. People throw out names like Rockefeller and Rothschilds and these things, but we don't even know who these people are. Like, they're so secretive, and we don't know what kind of, cabal or what kind of, institutions they have and get-togethers and gatherings. There's Bilderberg, and there's these things that we know about, right? But we don't even know, like, the true nature of their interactions and how they manage things, because it's not just one group of people, one family. It's a whole bunch of, whatever, of these people that are part of a club. And they have to administer and run humanity in whatever direction they're doing for their personal benefit, right? And so, do you think these people would let Joe Biden wreck America? And what Trump is saying? Like Trump says, that if Kamala Harris gets elected, she's going to run the country to the ground. Trump himself said, what kind of way is this to run the country, when he got ousted? Like, he thought he was going to win that election, clearly. He's bought into the illusion. This is when they put people undercover. You see this with movies about this, but it happens in real life, where they put people in undercover, and people will, engage in. There was a guy who was like an FBI agent, and he tried to, infiltrate some sort of, like militia type people, whatever it is, and he married a woman and had like kids, like, and he was undercover. He's marrying, one of the women who were in the gang or whatever he was doing, the criminal element. Like they just lose it. They start living those lives, right? It only takes about a week, the Stockholm syndrome. And so you start buying into your role. You forget you're acting. You forget you're living a double life, right? And so, Trump clearly believes in all of it. Like he's bought into this role. And I don't even know how much they're telling him because he's such a dope. He's just such a clown. So, but if you believe that there are people pulling the strings, that's what real truthers believe, that there's a shadow government. That's, Truther 101. Even Alex Jones and those people, shadow government, right? And so if there are people pulling the strings from the shadows, then if they don't want America to collapse, they wouldn't want America to collapse. They would, they wouldn't let it collapse, right? But if things are being done to collapse America, it's because they're making it happen. And if they're making it happen, there's no stopping them, because you don't have any real power. Some, dopes at Walmart are going to vote for Trump and stop this from happening. No, it's not. Like the commercials and the way, the idiocracy that's set in, and the dumbing down of all of this stuff. My wife sent me a close-up video of Gwen Walsh, and I talked about her crazy eyes, and you can really see it in the close-up video, and I'll cover that in my next video. She's just batshit crazy. Like they all are, and they're all they're not functional people, and they're pandering to the stupidest people. They're not going after smart people votes, right? And smart people might feel like they're obliged to vote, and so they'll pick one or the other. But they're pandering to the dumbest level of people. And then, does that even matter? Like, does that, they got those machines that can be hacked and all the rest of it. So is it, the elections are not really even legitimate. And even if they are, there's people who run the government because there's a shadow fucking government. And so if the collapse of our system is being talked about, and we now see that it's, potentially going to happen, then they must be making that happen, right? They must know that this has to happen. They've accepted this has to happen. They don't have any allegiance to America. They use people and they use countries for whatever, to keep the system and going, to keep their power, their reign of terror going, right? Like their empire going. And so it's going to collapse inevitably. It's built to collapse. It's a debt-based economic system. And they use the American people are not, even with bringing in immigrants, we're so entitled, and we're so, and we're just not good workers anymore. We're not good subjects to these, these shadow kings, right? And so they'll just go with somebody else. They'll go with people who are hungrier, who are more desperate, right? Who are willing to do work, or robots. Like I said this before, like when robots can, most of the population can be reduced, and they could just have robots do all the, they can have millions of people, not even billions, less than, 500 million people, whatever it is, right? And the Georgia Guidestones or whatever that is, I don't know how legitimate that is either, but, they can reduce the population by billions of people and just have robots do all the things they need to be done. And, there'll be minimal use and need for other people, right? And the planet will, won't suffer as much pollution, and they won't need as much energy. They won't have to gather as much food, and they still have a slave population that is, doesn't question their, whatever, right? So robots, the existence of robots will bring down humanity, because robots are already replacing humanity, just like AI is replacing humanity. Think about if there was just exclusive areas, coastal areas, and places where rich people want to live, like the best places by the ocean, these coastal areas. And the rest was just nature. The planet, is taking care of itself. Just vast amount of natural areas, undeveloped areas where trees and forests could regrow, and, less use of oil, less use of natural gas, and all the things that are harming the planet. And they could just, reduce the population to the people that they thought were worth, keeping, and then get rid of everybody else and have robots. And you would have the planet could heal itself, and all these issues. The overpopulation is a real thing, and they know about it. And so, at some point, they're going to make a plan, or they're going to execute a plan that's been in the making for years to get rid of vast amount of population. So you just got to have to look at that as a realistic possibility. I mean, you think that's happening already because you thought they were trying to, do that with the vax and these other things, right? Population reduction. And so you already kind of believe that, yet you're doing nothing to prepare for that inevitability of a collapse of system, right? And I'm not trying to sell this to you. I just can't believe that you're not even thinking about it, which most people are so overwhelmed and asked out that they can't. They're bankrupt. They don't have enough, they just have enough energy to get through the day because of their shitty lives and their drained relationships. They don't have any extra love or prana in their heart or energy and resources to do anything else. I mean, that's the sad part. That's most truthers. They could watch videos and lament and think about what's going on and suffer what's in a more awakened state than the average sheeple, but they can do nothing to stop it other than, well, I'll vote for Trump, and just doing random shit because they have no other recourse but to do that, right? But the other piece to this is if you're like, the first thing is if you're a truther. And the second thing is if you're a person who believes in God, right? You believe there's a divine system, then you have to look at what's going on here and saying, this thing that we have now goes against God. It's not, divinely inspired. And I'm not talking just about abortion or any of these symptoms. The whole system, that we are getting farther and farther away from God. We're getting farther and farther away from what it's like to be natural human beings. And each generation gets more and more inhuman, like more and more like the best part of being a human, disconnected from their souls and everything else, right? You don't think people are getting better, right? You think they're getting more divine and getting, religion is dying, and the religion sucks, and I've gone through that, right? How the religion is is disconnecting people from God, but people don't even have that. Kids are growing up without any of those good things of religion. I mean, at least better than being indoctrinated. It'd be better than be indoctrinated by religion and have some fear of God, even though fear of God is a horrible thing to have, than have, being raised by the internet and these demonic people that, they're the worst people. You see the difference now in ways that it affects the family, the way it affects morality. People getting farther and farther away from those things. And, as bad as religion is, at least people have an idea that there's God, even if it's not, helpful. And so you got to see that things are going in a direction that's demonic, right? And so if you believe in God and you see that we're going in the opposite direction, don't you think God has a plan to stop that? To minimize the damage, right? Or that there be consequences when you go away from God, right? Wouldn't that be the case? So if the controllers are pushing for depopulation and a collapse of the system, and particularly America right now, for all Americans, and both people are saying it, both parties are saying it, that collapse of America is on the table, and the controllers that are the puppet masters of these people aren't preventing that and are allowing that message to get out there. And not only just that, but movies and people just have this sense of an apocalypse, a pending doom. I mean, even that, people are like, believing that this is totally possible, that the collapse of the empire is imminent, right? And God would be pushing for it. The divine forces, there must be divine beings that, work for God and are overseeing the planet. I mean, that's a, wonderful way to look at it. There's, that they just don't leave this thing to chance, that all the saints and the people that are here, spiritual people, are looking at this system saying, oh man, we're fucked, and are coming up with a plan to destroy it because it can't be, fixed. It's going in the wrong direction. And so both of those, if you have the people that are the shadow government people and also the divine forces, are both pushing for the collapse of this system. It's a necessity. There's no other option, right? And we should be able to see that that's the, the only good thing, the only possible way to, I mean, it's like Trump going bankrupt again, right? Like there's no, becomes something where that becomes the best option for him, but not for the rest of the world. But anyways, what we're talking about here is a systemic collapse. And so that has to happen. It's inevitable, and it's a good thing when it does. And so, putting some effort into, and this is what Pockets of the Future stands for. And I've been making videos and, hundreds of millions of views, and, people have heard the message about divinity being within them, my primary messages, and, building a future, like a better version, a better system, and starting now on a local basis where there's these little pockets of the future starting to live now the way everyone's going to have to live in the future, because there's going to be a transition. If any part of humanity survives the collapse of the empire, which has happened before, right? The good thing about this is that these collapsing empires and kingdoms and all these things, and again, there's many more. I'm going to show these lists, but these lists that I've shown earlier in this video, there are many more than that, right? Like, there's just the ones we know about. And there's been so many of these empires. Everything dies. It's a system, right? And so, people don't have a belief that they're going to die. And that's, the big issue here. And with that, like, America's too big to fail, right? The banks are too big to fail, the economy, these things. And that somehow you can say the system and the people are going to live forever. Almost nobody prepares for their death. And they've really heightened the fear of death. So it's the one inevitability. We're all going to die. It's the one guarantee. It's just a matter of when. It's not an if thing, right? I mean, are you going to get married? Well, that's an if. Are you going to have kids? Well, that's an if. Are you going to be homeless? Well, that's an if, right? Are you going to have cancer? Well, that's an if, right? Are you going to be healthy? Well, for some period of time, that's an if, right? I mean, anything that you think about that people have, are you going to eat tomorrow? Well, that's an if. There's so many ifs out there. But the one thing that isn't an if is death. Like, that's a when. That's not an if. There's no if about it. There's no living forever. You can live for 200,000 years, 1,000,000 years, but it's still a when. The when is, usually, lately, in the past whatever amount of years, the when is, 120 years. Somewhere between the day you're born and 120 years from now. And mostly 80 or 90, or 70 is the average, 79, almost 80 in America, but globally, I don't know what it is, right? It's probably your 70s, 80s. And so, it's between that, that day you're born and that, time period and the maximum amount of, days that you could live, right? My wife and I were talking about this because my dad had irritable bowel syndrome for the last 20 years of his life. And he was always had this big pot belly. So my dad was like a couple inches shorter than me. And, not I'm a better version. Let's put physically, I'm a better version. Better athlete, right? Better looking. But, I have some of my dad in me and my family. Like in terms of my family, I'm, the tallest. Like that's, I'm taller than anybody, my siblings and my grandparents and these people. So I'm taller than them. And, I'd like to think smarter and certainly more spiritual because none of them embarked on a spiritual journey like I did, right? So I'm a better version, but I still have all these same genetic tendencies or whatever it is. But my dad was like scared shitless of death. Like he was just petrified of death. And my family and I, my kids and I, drove down to Florida to see my parents. I'm not sure why now. Like I've don't know why. It was a time my ex, she was by herself and she invested and started watching Alex Jones. Like Alex Jones, I had found I would become a truther, and I watched some of these videos about the big event in September 2001, and I didn't really know much about Alex Jones, but she found Alex Jones. Now she's a liberal and a truther denier, but she did this on her own, and she really got into it. Like I had already had my awakening, and then right after that, I was going down to Florida with my kids, and with this big 16-passenger van, and there's an ashram. My brother was staying at the ashram, and my kids got sick on the way. Like we're going from Virginia to Molina, Georgia, then to Boca Raton, Florida. And it was a long, drive. Florida's like forever. It's like, it's longer than like 3 states. It's just this long state, the peninsula is going out to the ocean. Florida is just like this giant sandbar, right? Where the Gulf of Mexico, the water gets heated and, the water goes up the Gulf Stream and heats Europe. And if Florida didn't exist, Europe would freeze, right? Like it's just that kind of a world. Like if Florida didn't have this area where this Gulf of, the Gulf of Mexico was created, where the water just gets heated up there. That's why there's a lot of hurricanes that come up through that area, because hot water is, feeds these hurricanes. But anyways, there's we drove down there, and I hadn't seen my parents maybe in 4 or 5 years. My dad longer. Like my mom had come to visit maybe, I don't know, when my daughter was born. Like, so I don't even know how long it had been since I'd seen my dad. But we went down there, and my dad was a shell of himself. Like he could only barely see. He really couldn't see at all. He had cataracts, and he was like a living, walking skeleton. He had lost all this weight. He loved to eat. So my dad had, like I was saying to my wife, he loved to eat. He loved to watch TV, and that was about it. He had, pornography. So I think he was, a chronic, masturbator, whatever it was, right? But like, I don't know when these things fell off, but he had these 3 things, right? Like that's all he did. Like he did a little writing and did whatever, but in reality he liked to eat. He was a big Italian eater, and he liked to watch TV, and that's about it. Like I don't think he liked anything else. And he didn't really have any friends, and nobody really liked the kids. None of us liked him or would go to him for advice because he was a loser, and he was petrified of death. And I could see it. And they had this woman come in and bathe him, like some nurse. And they were in Boca Raton, Florida, and it was 80 degrees out. And they turned the heat up in the house, so it was 90 degrees. And they did it all night. The heat was set on 90 in the night, right? When we, they had 2 bedrooms, and my dad was in one, my mom was in the other. My dad could no longer bathe himself. He could barely eat. And I'm like, how the fuck is he alive? Like, just die already, right? Why are you doing this? Because he was petrified of dying. I'm like, how is this living? You have nothing to live for. You have nothing to offer humanity, and you're just hanging on, and the medical community was just keeping him alive. And he was walking around. When I saw him, I was like freaked out. It was like, he was a skeleton. Like he was so, there was no, he had lost any weight that he had. He was just like his skin was on his bones. He couldn't process his food and nutrients because his digestive system was fucked. And he was just clinging on to life, petrified of death. And he hung on for another year. And my mom, who, they were separated for a little while, like maybe 10 years before that. And they were both living in separate houses. And my dad was desperate to get back together with my mom because she was taking care of him. And I thought she would be liberated of him, and she'd have a life without him. And she died like a year and a half later, and she was in much better shape when we saw them both. But she had nobody to take care of anymore, and she had no real purpose. And so she died, right? But, neither one of them died well. I'm sure my mom died better because she had a relationship with God. She felt the energy when she did the Sajmarg meditation. And even, despite that, she prayed a lot, and she had, a spiritual life as a Christian, as a Catholic. And so either way, she was, she had a much better death. But I saw my dad being just petrified, right? Like he did the meditation, he saw light, the meditation I do. And he got scared and never did it again. And I'm like, you're supposed to meditate on divine light. Like I never saw light. And and you saw it and you didn't, walk into the light, Ralph, walk into the light, or Ralph, I was talking about Ralph in the beginning, but, he died petrified of death. And, my wife has a situation now, a relative who has terminal cancer. We're talking about that. Similar, someone who's just petrified of death and, all of these things. Now, I'm not advocating being a daredevil and doing bungee jumping and hang gliding and, parachuting and being one of these risk people, right? And those people are almost more scared of death, right? These thrill seekers, but they're looking for a thrill. I'm not talking about that. And I'm not talking about suicide or just giving up. but embracing the idea that you're going to die. Like, this is, our culture has made us petrified of death, and you just don't think about it. Like, there's this happily ever after thing that happens, but, it also makes us petrified of the problems and the difficulties that we go through in our life, right? So these are the things that we've been, taught, and, the things that we, believe are, avoidable, right? And this being petrified of death, or, not even thinking about it as being inevitable. Like, most people think they're going to live forever, and then they get old and they're like, what the fuck, right? And it just, creeps up on you really quickly. The older you get, the faster time flies by you. It just does. It's amazing how fast time flies for me now. It's a weird phenomenon, because I think about something that happened a year ago, and I'm like, wow, that seems like 10 years ago. But moving forward from that year, the days just fly by. And so, it seems like time was so slow when I was a kid. It just moves faster, right? And so if you look at your time as a currency, your time is what really is valuable. It's not, it's the real currency, right? It's the amount of time that you have before you die in this life. And it's a currency that you throw away, when you're young. Like, you just flitter it away, whatever bad choices you make, whatever crappy foods you eat, whatever lifestyle choices you make, whatever bad relationship choices you make. And the other currency is your life's energy, right? The energy you have in your life. And so these two things go together, because your life's energy, your prana, when that's all used up, you're dead. This love energy that you have, right? On a soul level. And so when that's used up, and your time ends. And so these two currencies, the energy that you have, because you could have time left, but your life energy is just gone. You see people all the time, and they're just bankrupt, and they're incapable. They're just, they're like, wet noodles. They don't have anything. They don't have a will force. They don't have a life force. They're barely functioning. Go look at people in an insane asylum, or homeless people, right? They've just given up. They have nothing. So they have time left, but no life force, right? So these are your currencies, and people think of all these other things as their currencies, and those are your currencies of your life. What you have of value, what you have to spend on things, right? It's like, in a video game, like, you spend your life force on certain things, right? You buy certain things, wherever how the video game is structured. But you have these lives, right? You have so many lives that you're given, and you have this life force, and somebody shoots you or something like that, takes a hit of your life force, right? Whatever, way that your life force is, especially these video games where your life force, it's not like you just die every time. Like, you have, your life is at 80%. Your life is at your energy, whatever. And so, this understanding of your life being reduced by bad choices, and then also your time being minimized with those bad choices, right? Where, okay, you were going to live to 80, but now you're going to live to 70 because you were a coke addict, or you're a meth head, or all these things. That now your time has been reduced, right? So there's two ways of looking at your time. There's the maximum amount of time that you're going to have on this planet, right? And then there's the time reduction aspect by bad choices, where that maximum amount of time gets taken away. And then also the time that you have on a daily basis. Like, you have you have today. You have this moment. What are you going to do in this moment? Like, of value to you. Like, if you're not figuring out what your soul wants you to do, you're not getting to your true purpose here, then you're just going to make bad choices. If you don't even know you have a soul, or think about you having a soul, and you don't think about your soul's path, and you're not embracing the divinity within you to guide you on on the appropriate path, the right path, then you're just going to make wrong choices, right? You're going to waste spend your currency of your time to go backwards, and just, embrace the negativity of this illusionary demonic system that dominates your physical existence. And so people don't think this way because they don't understand that death is inevitable. They don't understand they have a limited amount of time, and the clock is ticking, right? And that, all the things that were important to do that you've put off, the things that are, essential, like finding a purpose and doing something. You're just flittering your time away doing some slave job and, wasting your time going to family gatherings or things like this and just out of obligation and just, oh, these are the things I'm supposed to do. And just ticking the box and checking the boxes and, just mindlessly going through life unaware of your true purpose or any real thing. Like, it's just not being a real person, right? It's not being alive. It's not living a life, right? And so, this is all part of the voting for Trump or Kamala. Like, it's all just a waste of time. Like, can't you see this is a waste of time? I have to watch this stuff because I mock it and I, have a higher purpose in terms of, saying there's something else. Like, that's my job here, saying there's something else other than what you're seeing. There's something else other than the news and Hollywood and the politics and, material life and capitalism and, all these things that you are focused on. You've been told this is your life and you're like, well, isn't there something more? And I provides the something more here. The Sajmarg meditation, an internal life and, soul-driven existence, right? Like not that that's my thing, but I'm saying that there's this other thing. And people who connect with this other thing, and then you have this sense of, okay, I'm accepting that death is inevitable. And death isn't a bad thing. That's the other thing. We've been told over and over again, and it's really in our TV and movies more than anything else, that death is a bad thing, right? I mean, it's inevitable, and yet it's bad. And it's the one guarantee, and yet it's bad, right? It's the one thing that we all share, and yet it's bad. And so why is it bad? And so, is there something better? Like, then the question is there something better than life, right? If death isn't bad, well, then, is there something better than being a human being? Is this not as good as something else that's waiting for us, potentially, if we live our lives in a correct manner? Like, can we graduate out of this experience on planet Earth and then, be elevated to something else, right? The promise of an afterlife that exists in religions, but it's just bullshit stuff, because the promise, like in Christianity, that if you accept Jesus and, you accept the religion, that somehow you're going to be in this heavenly, or, these people, these jihadists that believe that they're going to get 70 virgins and a mule if they, do these things. I mean, it's just bullshit stuff, right? Like, really connecting now to the divinity within you. And then you're connecting to, I've told that story that Master Chargy, the third master of the system, used to tell the story about there was this kingdom. And you could be king for a year, because they had all these kings that would wreck the country. And so they would have someone be king for a year. And that king would just indulge. And then after the year was up, they would be taken and banished from the kingdom. And so one person was, like a smart guy, was made king, and he didn't indulge at all. He spent all his time building a kingdom on the other side. They would take the king to a river and sail him across the river, put him across the river in a boat and let him go and say, you can't come back to the kingdom. But he spent all his time, a year, building another kingdom on the other side of the river. And then he went to they put him in a boat and put him across the river. And he went in and said, I'm the king of this new kingdom, right? It's a metaphor for death, right? It's, spending your time partying, spending your time indulging in your material, pleasures and sensory stimulation, as opposed to building this other kingdom on a spiritual level, so that when you die, you go across to that, right? And so this is using your time correctly. But if you're a kind of person who thought about death, regularly, in not a bad way or good way, a neutral way, you're not looking forward to it, you're not embracing it, you're not saying, oh, I can't wait for I can't wait, because people get to that state where they can't wait to die, right? They've been so crushed by their life that they can't wait to die. And they're longing for death. Not because something better is waiting for them on the other side, just that their life has sucked so bad, right? And then there's, people who are just petrified and never think about it. But just have a healthy, realistic perspective about dying, and that you're aware of it. You're aware that you have a limited time here, and let's make the most of it in some positive way. And what does that mean? Well, maybe being more connected to people, whatever you think it is, or maybe it's about spirituality or whatever. That's the best thing. I mean, there has to be a, after death, like you have to think about what's going to happen after death. and not some bullshit promise you've been given by your religion that, they can't deliver on because they've made a false promise to you. Like, anything that's promised you by an organization is not, valid, right? It's got to be something that you can experience, the kingdom of heaven within, as Jesus said, that you can go inside and experience your etheric side, your soul. You can experience the part of you that, and where you are right now as a soul. Like your soul exists somewhere in the etheric world, in the energetic world, right? And so when you die, that's where you're going. Like wherever your soul is right now, your soul exists in your body and in that place right now. Like it's both things. Like just like you're an avatar in a video game, and the person's outside, in the computer watching it on the screen. Like your soul is, exists in a different realm, a different, outside the third dimensional planet Earth, right? But it's also in your body because it's not it's no physical distance because it's the third dimensional realm of planet Earth. It's physical distance. You have to walk from one place to another. But etheric being can travel just by thought to anywhere in the physical universe or anywhere in the etheric universe that they're allowed to go, right? They have access to, right? And so if you think about that you can connect right now to where you'll be after you die, to the etheric world, well, that makes the journey a lot easier because you're consciously aware of it. You're consciously aware of your transition from, when you go to sleep, that's the case. I talked about sleep in this video, a voiceover that I never turned into a video, and I think I have it still somewhere. But like sleep is a part of that, right? Because you're dying. Like where do you go when you're sleeping? You're not in your physical body. Like you have to be pulled in, you get woken up by your alarm clock or somebody wakes you up or whatever. And your consciousness has to be pulled back into your soul, has to be like pulled back into your body, and you have to open your eyes. And, and during that period of time, you don't know what the fuck just happened, right? Like you can wake up and someone's painted a mustache on your face, right? You don't know, like you're dead to the world. That's what the people say. Things are going on in the world. You wake up and there's events, and you went to bed, it was dark, and you wake up, it's the sun's come up, and you're completely unaware of what's happened. And so like that's a taste of death, right? It's a taste of your body no longer being occupied by you, and you being unconscious of the material world. And so if you had this kind of perspective, then your life would be greatly changed because you would live your life in a different way. And they've prevented you, the people powers that be, through this materialistic system, from thinking about life and death and things and real things, and just get you focused on the, immediate desire or immediate problem and immediate thing to solve and, whatever. Petty little things and things like elections. It's all just one big distraction, right? And you can clearly see that this system that you're 100% dependent on is coming to an end. That you might last to whatever extent, depending on how old you are, some portion of it. But in 100 years, the Earth is going to be completely different. There's going to be systemic collapse, and there's going to be drastic changes. And 200 years, 300 years, whatever. There's going to be like things that we thought were, there's going to be no America. Like there's going to be no whatever. There'll be no, the structure of the world will be changed, and the physical structure and the social systems of the governments, they're all going to disappear. And people living in 200-300 years are going to have completely different lifestyles. And just right now, you're watching an abomination. You're watching something that shouldn't be. It's an abomination of what, like, goes against the divine will and, God's plans and things like this, or at least, it's wrong choices. It's a plethora of wrong choices, of collective wrong choices of humanity, going against their, soul's path and doing, things that are taking them in the wrong direction. And when it goes, it goes. And right now, you're watching it die. You're watching something that, in a way, should have never been, die a miserable death. And, we're connected to it, dependent on it. And so it's something that everyone should be aware of. And, the idea then becomes, well, what happens next? And you can think about that in terms of what happens after you die and what happens after the system dies. You know, what do I do then? You know, what's going to become of me, a person dependent on the system and distracted by the system when the system goes, or when I die? Like, what's going to happen then? And these are like real questions people should be asking, because, you know, time is running out. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramato, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.